Okie dokie. So, this is it, folks. We are going live, and I just have to attend to Jennifer. So, this is it, and folks. We are going live. We are live, and that's great. And lots of people all piling in all at once. So welcome to Celebrating Experiences. And we've got a great bunch of people joining us now, quick and fast. And hi, Kate, my co-host here. And
hello.
Bethany is going to talk in a minute. And Kelly as well. Actually, it's good if you say something because then you come on screen. But and Judy, hi.
Hi.
And let me just do this. And oops. And sorry, folks, I'm just sending a link to Jennifer. And
I just did, Michael. It's okay.
oh, good. Thanks. And welcome, Tennis.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Good to see everyone.
Yeah. So while we admit all of these people, let me have a little bit of a rave. And I'm so glad you all could join us. This discussion and hearing from experiences is actually one of the most central things of Beyond Being Human ultimately, where the initial messaging that I got from the angelic realm was to increase the level of conversation about our multidimensional being, and that's where we go beyond being human. And the the fact that so many people just are totally unaware of all of the other kinds of beings that are in and around our world. And it constantly amazes me when I talk to people that, like, even people not believing in ghosts and things like that, it's like really kind of surprising. And I know all of us here can speak to all of the various different kinds of entities, beings, and energies, and all sorts of different things, galactic beings. And like the actual mission to be able to share I'm just going to mute everyone if that's okay. Yeah, so I'd like to read a little intro on an article that you can go to beyondbeinghuman.org/multidimensional reality. And that link is also on the our community page, because I'd like people to read it. And it's actually like a work in progress, because I'm going to start adding people's stories, maybe even those who are going to speak today, which is going to be exciting. And let me just quickly share the screen so you can see that. And Uh, let me read this. So, multidimensional reality. Getting to grips with a bewildering universe. Across centuries and continents, human beings have spoken of encounters with entities that defy standard definitions of reality, whether they're called ghosts, angels, demons, fairies, or extraterrestrials. These beings are often described as inhabiting dimensions parallel to our own. While scientific materialism often dismisses such experiences as hallucinations or folklore, the persistence and variety of these stories invite deeper reflection. Are these beings figments of imagination, misunderstood psychological phenomena, or something much more complex? Perhaps visitors from dimensions imperceptible to our current understanding. From ancient sacred texts to contemporary UFO testimonies, humanity has consistently reported contact with non-human intelligences, even in the Bible, uh, with angelic and demonic, etc. These experiences are not isolated to one culture or belief system. Rather, they appear globally and across time. So what we're going to explore is a range of entities drawing on this article draws on well-documented cases and cultural law to understand who or what these might be and how their presence continues to shape the human experience. And before we go into our stories and things, would anyone like to have a chat about that? Maybe Kate, if you wanted to start off and you could point to other people.
I'm sorry, I was in chat. What would you like? Oh, I can't hear you.
I'm sure Tanis could probably say something straight off the bat about all of that.
Sure. Um, so I had my own experiences with many of these beings and in various ways, of course, and we all have those experiences depending on what our sensitivities are, whether we have strong clairs or not. So I think there are more and more people that are having these like real life experiences, real life. That's not quite the word I want to use, but we're seeing things more clearly, or we're feeling things more clearly, or we're hearing things more clearly from some of the other dimensional frequencies, especially as the vibration of the earth rises. We seem to be lifting and lifting veils as we do this. So for myself, I work with the angelic realm a lot. I'm a galactic ambassador with the Galactic Federation. So I work with them as well as the Earth organization, the Alliance for Extraterrestrial Diplomatic Contact, which Michael is quite familiar with that. We work with both agencies and so yeah, so there's a lot of that happening, I think. There's the physical realm and then there's the other realms. They're all around us. They're not quite in our range, right? So I'm sure I'm speaking to all of those in this room that are familiar with this. Perhaps some of our viewers are not. So the for me, our range of visual is like here, right? And all of these others beings that are extra dimensionals, they're all out here. So as we raise our vibration and we open up our perception, we start to step into a more in-depth experience with those other dimensional beings. So yeah. Is that what you were hoping for, Michael? What kind of overview would
Yes.
you like?
Yeah, no, that's great. And anyone else, put your hand up, or you can use the reactions, and I'll let Kate do the traffic generally. But anyone else like to talk about the general kind of aspects of the different beings and why it's important for us to kind of understand at least and be aware of all of that.
Well, I think
I know
also the sorry, just to add on to my piece there, the importance of it is that we understand and we have a better overall view of what's happening around us, because we really have this limited view at the moment. And then as we start to open that up, we're able to, you know, just it's a whole new world. Sorry.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think that thank you, Tanis, for stepping in there. I have friends who are all popping in, so I was saying hi to everybody. I think there's about 4 or 5 people here that came to to see this for the first time and to meet Michael. So Michael, just to point out some of the people, Victor Vigiani, Jay Taylor, and Sarah, and Spacia. So just so you know. And I think Tanis was saying how I think most of the people in here could speak probably better than I could about the variety of beings. I've had encounters with only 2, um, and one was a non-corporeal being. So where that falls in, I don't know. When I had the encounter when I was 6, and um, at the time I didn't know what it was. The only being I knew of other than, humans, intelligent being, was God. So I just thought it was God. Who it was, I don't know. And then I encountered a light being. But as far as my experiences, it's been mostly craft. I've seen multiple types of craft, 8 different types. So from what I've been reading about the bios of some of the people who will be speaking, I think there's people in here who can really talk about the gamut of what's actually out there.
Yeah. And let's jump to Judy, because I know you've had lots of experiences.
I have, Michael. I've had contact with the ones known as the Greys all my life, and in fact, I have memories of working up on the ships as one of them. And a teaching that we were given about 20 years ago now was on what the Greys refer to as a human ladder. And this just links in with what we were speaking about a few minutes ago, with all the dimensions being here and more people opening up to them. What the human ladder is, it's a cycle of expanding and deepening conscious awareness from level 1, which is where planet Earth is, right up to level 10, which is right up the top. And each level is more and more conscious awareness being expanded. So planet Earth being on level 1, we can access about 10% of our potential conscious awareness, whereas those right up the top of the ladder can access 100%. So what's happening at the moment, planet Earth is shifting from first level to second level. So in other words, more and more of us are opening up greater amounts of our conscious awareness, which means we can start to open up to ETs, ghosts, spirits, angels, whatever, and become more consciously aware of them. This is why it's happening with some Earth humans and others not. Some are evolving and some are still staying where they are. I mean, we'll all evolve eventually, but those who are starting to shift up with the planet. This is what human evolution is all about. Self-realization and opening up to more and more expanded conscious awareness.
Yeah, totally. And a little bit later on, we'll come back to you and hear about specific grey encounters and things. That'll be great. So I'm going to let Cate do some traffic control, and I'm trying to contact Melissa, and then we'll jump over to Tammy for her amazing story about demonic encounters. But back to you, Cate.
I'm actually very fascinated about did you say Tammy had the demonic encounters? So I've had some encounters in dreams, and I've had 2 what I called psychic attack or demonic attacks. So when I heard about Tammy's story, I was very curious. So I'm really looking forward to hearing that. Um, and actually, Tanis mentioned in the chat that she's encountered a mantis being, which again, I had a small experience with a mantis being in a, just in that sort of early waking state. So it wasn't, I didn't actually physically see one, but I did feel like I had an encounter in this sort of liminal state. But let's hear from Tanis.
Sure, thank you, because I do have to go. I have a client tonight, so thank you all for your patience with that. So I actually had, I was just finishing teaching a class in my sunroom, and I heard in my head telepathically, may I speak with you, please? And I was like, okay. And I look around, and there's this 8-foot, 9-foot praying mantis being standing just outside the sunroom. So I was like, Archangel Michael, you're coming, right? Because it's big. So he came, and I stepped outside and stood, and I looked up at him, and I was like, hello. We understand you are a galactic ambassador, he said. This is telepathically, of course, not verbally. And I said, yes, apparently so. We would like you to pass on the message that not all insectoids are nefarious. Thank you. I said, okay, yes. And he nods, and he does this. And he toddles off towards the back of the yard, where I notice there are 5 more standing in the back corner of my yard. So I should have prefaced this by these are extra dimensionals. Okay, so they're not physical, they're in a higher frequency. I'm able to see them just because it's one of my things. But so I thought, okay, am I going crazy? This is like, so I go back in, and one of the women in the class sees shapes, not detail, but she sees shapes. So I go back in, and I'm like, okay, ladies, do you see anything back there? And one of them says, well, I don't see, detail, but I see 6 shapes back there, energy signatures. I was like, okay, thank you. So I had visitors in the backyard. So that was kind of fun. And I had a healing done by Ragus, who is my Octurian guide, and that was pretty cool. And I've had the demonic stuff as well. I've had encounters with that, of course, over the years too. So yeah, so I've had lots of encounters with different beings, and it's fun, right? We just be open and curious. And yes, Jen, I'm stealing your line. We be open and curious to what's around. So thank you.
Thank you, Tanis. It's interesting that you said how they approached you when this sort of mantis being sort of, I call it, popped its head into my consciousness. It was very polite. Did you notice that?
Yes.
I was shocked by that. It's like he was so polite. It's like he was like kind of tentatively like, is it okay if I do this kind of thing?
Most of them are. I find most of them are. I mean, there's ones that aren't. Of course, we're not talking about the demonic stuff, but the ETs and of course our guides are very polite. They know that we have free will, and they ask permission and all of that stuff. That's how sort of part of how we can tell who's who in the zoo. Yeah.
I might jump in just briefly too, because since we're going to talk about demons and things, this wasn't necessarily demonic, but one of the articles that I wrote for Supernal magazine, and by the way, Anthony, the editor of Supernal, is here with us, and he's going to be talking about ghosts and various other kinds of beings. But one of the experiences that I had, which was a total surprise, was when I was quite young, sort of late teens, opening a car door, and a whole tunnel of ghouls appeared, as if to suck me into the underworld kind of thing. And grey, definitely the intent was palpable. And I just looked at this and like, whoa, what's going on? It was the first time I'd ever kind of experienced anything like that. And I decided, well, I'm not going to stay here, so I just ran through it. But funnily enough, a few years later, they appeared again, and you'll read all the details in the Supernal magazine. Put a bit of a teaser in there. And anyway, so just as we're going to talk about demonic encounters and things, I'll read a little bit of the intro here. So, often portrayed as malevolent entities, demons, sometimes called jinn, occupy a complex space in spiritual and metaphysical traditions. Whilst demons are typically associated with Christian cosmology, fallen angels or dark spirits opposed to divine order, the jinn originate in pre-Islamic Arabian belief and are described in the Quran as beings made of smokeless fire, existing in a parallel world to humans. One of the most widely publicized modern demon-related cases is Anneliese Michel, a German woman who underwent a series of Catholic exorcisms in the 70s. Diagnosed with epilepsy and psychiatric disorders, Anneliese claimed to be possessed by multiple entities, including Lucifer and Judas. Her disturbing behaviour, physical deterioration, and eventual death led to both criminal convictions and theological debate. Audio recordings from her exorcisms continue to circulate, fueling speculation about the nature of her affliction. In contrast, jinn are not inherently evil. Islamic tradition holds that they, like humans, possess free will and are accountable for their actions. Some are believed to be helpful or neutral, while others may be mischievous or harmful. I'll leave it there and you can read more in the article. And so maybe let's cross over to Tammy, and I'd love to hear from you.
Can you hear me? Okay. So yeah, I've actually had a few different demonic, like dark entity experiences, but what I'm going to talk about tonight was the most profound. I ended up having severe PTSD for a couple years. It took me a couple years to get over this one, but I don't know if I should go into detail more about it, or should I wait until it's time for me to actually, unless this is the time that I'm actually going to speak fully about it. Okay.
Yeah, we'll give you like 3 to 5 minutes sort of thing, and each person will do similar kind of thing. Carry on.
Okay. So I don't know how much I can get into the 3 to 5 minutes, but for me, I was here, as you can see, I'm in an RV, and I was here in this RV, and in the middle of the night, my dog started barking like frantically. It was between like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I went to go turn off the bed, to turn my legs off the bed to climb down, and there was this force, and it didn't physically touch me. I just felt the force push me. And I literally flew off my top bunk there like Superman. And when I fell off the bunk, I fell in this bottomless black pit. And I was falling really, really fast. And I was flaring my arms, trying to grab anything that I could to stop me from falling. And there was just absolutely nothing there. It was just this black pit. And I was falling long enough for me to say, when am I going to hit the floor? It's only right there, because the floor from the bunk to the floor there is only about 3.5, maybe 4 feet. And as soon as I said that, I came instantly out of the black pit, and I broke both bones in my arm. My arm was flared back like this. My legs were out like this. So that kind of gives you an example. My body flew off the bed. My legs are way out here. My arm is back here, and ended up breaking both bones. But ultimately, that entity had attached itself to me. And for 3 months, it crawled up my leg, where I could actually physically feel it crawling up my leg, and it would come all the way up to my chest. And as soon as it hit my chest, I was thrown instantly back into that bottomless black pit. And so through all my experiences I went through in my life, I've learned how to disconnect from my body and just go right outside myself. And ultimately, that's what I had to do for about 3 months, is I had to disconnect from my body and allow my body to go through the motions of that whole freak out of the entity attacking me and throwing me in the bottomless black pit. And those episodes would happen 10 times a day, guaranteed, every night when I would go to sleep. And so after about 3 months, I all of a sudden remember or realized when I woke up that morning, I was like, oh my gosh, it didn't happen to me last night. It didn't get me last night. And I said in my head, I wonder if it's going to happen today. And I waited all day and it didn't happen again. And it's 5 years later and it hasn't happened to me since. It was just that period of time. But because of that happening to me, I fought post-traumatic stress disorder for about 2 years. Like, it was a serious fear that it was going to come back any day it's going to come back, and it just never did. And it's been 5 years now. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. It was pretty traumatic, I'm not going to lie, but I've had multiple experiences in that aspect, but I've also had way more experiences on the other side, where it was more of a heavenly type, unconditional love experience. So those outweigh the demonic and evil dark entity for sure. I don't know what else to say, Michael.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's just, these experiences can change our life. And I know the number of kinds of things. And of course, the angelic experience that I had really totally changed my life and gave birth to beyond being human. But yeah, so anyway, Kate, I'll pass back to you.
Sure. So I've had 2 demonic attacks. Both happened in a dream, but the first one in 1984, I think I was 21. I couldn't sleep for weeks afterwards. It felt like it happened to me in real life. It was a terrifying dream. It started with in the dream, I'm in a room, in my house, but it's not my house, that kind of thing. And my father's trying to resuscitate my brother. And he yells to me, go downstairs and get an ambulance, which is strange because normally you would call for an ambulance. And so I run tearing down the stairs, run out onto the street, and there's 3 ambulances parked across the street, and they're gray, and they have gray nuns driving them, 3 gray nuns and 3 gray ambulances. And my roommate is there, my roommate at the time, who was kind of like an older sister to me. And she grabs me and like hugs me and buries my head in her arms and says, the dark one is coming, the dark one is coming. Don't look at him or you'll never look up again. And so I'm like closing my eyes, trying to, shut everything down, but I still see him in my mind's eye and coming from behind. And he's this giant, like 8-foot tall being that had like was head to toe in black, like almost like black leathery skin. And for his face, it was like the eye of a fly, that segmented fly eye, the whole face. And it was kind of like almost like a helmet or something. And he had really long talons, like 4 or 5 inch long talons. And he was riding a giant fly, and he's flying down the street, and I see him come from behind. And as he's flying by, he pierces my back and grabs my heart and pulls my heart from my back, through my back, with my soul being dragged with it. And we fought like that for my soul. It felt like for like half an hour. And I just kept saying the Lord's Prayer over and over again. I didn't know what else to do. And I'm not particularly religious, but I knew that much. And after about half an hour, he threw my heart back and soul back into my body with this surge of hatred, and then flew off. And I woke up at that point, and like I kind of one of these things where you're like gasping, and I had this horrible pain in my heart. And there was a fly buzzing around me. But this was in January in Toronto. So it's like minus 20 outside. And so there's no flies. And the fly was giant, like it was a huge fly, and it was buzzing around me. And it just, all of a sudden, it just flew towards the window and flew right through the window pane out. So for me, that was real. That was a bona fide attack. And I, like I said, I couldn't sleep for weeks afterwards. And I'm still kind of have that fear in me, and fear of the dark and so on. But like I think it was Tammy was saying about that she's had I've also had the extreme opposite of that, the most beautiful encounters. So it's weird, like what is it? Is it a test? Are you being tested? Is it an initiation? This is the more recent thing, I wonder. Is it an initiation? Is it sort of part of what reality is, and I was just unlucky and open, not realizing what was out there, and just got attacked. The only when I was about 13, I had a dream where there were demons circling my house. So I was staying up on the top floor of our house, and in the dream I could see them circling my window. So and I had human encounters with very dark figures, but they were human. But I had 2 or 3 like that. So I'm not sure what was going on at that time and why it's changed, because I I had a second encounter just recently in the last let's say 4 or 5 years, and that's the last one I've had so far. And in that particular encounter, well, I won't go into it, but I was able to protect myself again. So I'll move it off to the next person.
Well, let me just sort of add, I wasn't going to talk about this, but since you mentioned saying the Lord's Prayer, the second time I experienced those ghouls, it was late at night and I was going to bed, and suddenly around the bed, like a sea of ghouls just started to creep in and again sort of sucked me down. That was the general feeling about it. And all I could think to do was put a cross of light over them and like push them away, and I guess call on Jesus and anything, because it was relentless, and it lasted for quite a long time, and I was ending up in sweat and like, okay, what do I do? I was at home, so I didn't really, I could have ran out of the room, but it was very puzzling at that particular time why it kind of happened. The final point to this, though, was in the morning after I eventually got to sleep, exhausted. I opened my bedroom door thinking, the regular day is beginning and everything's okay and whatever. And there was a griffin on the balustrade, and I could see it in absolute clear detail, and its head was facing one way, and as I opened the door, it just turned and its piercing eyes just totally like, and I slammed the door. I probably should have stayed and talked to it, but it really kind of freaked me out. And what I surmised due to various circumstances in my life was it was a warning or a telling me off, like, get my shit together in all sorts of different ways. And yeah, I'll never forget. I can still see the detail in the feathers and the beak and the eyes and everything. It was quite amazing. But anyway, someone else. Who else has got a story?
Tanis mentioned that Jen has had experiences. Is that true, Jennifer?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I mean, I can share a bit. To actually your question about, are we being tested or is this initiation? I think that sometimes these things come through because we are meant to bring light into the world. And so there is a parallel there that wants to stop that light from coming forward. And I mean, I have stories all the way back from, my mom telling me things that happened and demonic encounters when I was in the womb of them trying to make it so I wasn't born. And then being a child, being able to see all the beings. And so I think that there is something to be said for when these things come through, but also to remember with all of it that love and light is much more powerful than any of the darkness that comes through. And so that was something I had to learn from a young age, because when I would see these things, it was really scary. Here's a child who's seeing all kinds of entities, and some of them are cool looking and some of them are not. And so we get to that place where, at least for me, I said, that's it. I don't want to see this anymore. And I was able to not see it. And I don't know how much of a blessing that was, because I still felt everything. So I would know that there was stuff there. I just wouldn't see it anymore. And it took going through a whole lot of things within my own evolution to come back to a place where I said, you know what? This is what I'm here for. And so it's fine. I want to see it again. I want to step into that space and that role. And when I did that, it opened everything back up again. And luckily, I had members of my family who have all seen things all the way through. And so I had people who could say, hey, you're not going crazy. It's okay. These things do happen. This is what this is, and could help walk me through it to the point where, I was in university and I'm doing exorcisms because I understand it. And I've been in that place of, okay, I recognize the power that the light has and how we can actually overcome these dark energies, and understanding, where they're coming from and why they show up. And so I think that there is a place here, as we're talking about it, for all of us to acknowledge the difficulty that can come from having some of these encounters, but also the beauty and the evolution that can come within us as we really embrace that love and that light that can overcome all of it. And that can help through the PTSD and the trauma experiences and all of that. The other thing Tanis might have wanted me to talk about is that actually together we do it's called Peacekeepers of the Light, and it's a program that we run that basically goes through all of this, what it is to have these encounters, how to navigate them, different tools and things that you can bring into your experience in order to be able to clear spaces, as the comment says. And so, just holding that in the background. And so, even when Tanis was saying, sending love and light, it behind the scenes, we're clearing, because as we're talking about this stuff, right, we're pulling energies from all different places. And so, our role in the background is to put up that protection and hold that space and make this a clear, safe space for everybody to share. And so that's what I'm here for.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Wow. That's amazing. I'm going to check that out for sure. And I think Kelly wanted to say something.
Yeah, welcome everyone. So I work in the healing arts and of course channel a lot of messages. And as we've moved into this Aquarian age, or the age of energy, there's a lot of messages that have come through for me, and I resonate, of course, with what Jen was saying as well. I was quite in tune as a young child, and I kind of shut a lot of that down because I wanted to fit into society. And I've realized recently, through messages that I've received from the other side, that there's a lot of light workers that had energetic imprints put on them to block some of their gifts, which are going to be released now so that they can see through more of the veil and the multiple levels of dimensions, right? We were kind of put in some sort of protection by having these implants or energetic blocks. So that we wouldn't be fragmented by society young, when we have all seeing these things that most of people didn't believe were there. I myself have had quite a lot of experiences, whether it comes from one night being pinned down through an attack, a psychic attack, and as soon as they kind of held my body down, I knew to one, not drop into fear, because the more fear, the more they can hold on to you. So basically resetting my nervous system and calling in the archangels, and it shot this massive light up through my house and beamed out like almost like a bubble of protection, throwing whatever it was out of my room. And interesting enough, the next day I had a session with the client who also works a lot with multidimensional space, and she was going through a lot of attacks and things like that. And while we were in that session, in that experience, I had some, like, of the ancient gods, the one with the alligator face, just drop into the healing room to actually work with us. And I stood there and I was like, what is happening right now? When something like that all of a sudden appears on the other side of your healing table, to stand there and say, can I come in and assist in this work? And these are the things, like, where I've had deities appear. I've also, witnessed or felt, I guess you want to call them ghosts, where my dad had passed over and I could feel his presence in the room and I could hear him, but I couldn't physically fully see him, but I knew it was him. And I think we're going to experience more and more of these, and seeing a lot more people awaken to this. And, at first it can be such a shock to the nervous system. And if we can't learn how to master that energetic frequency and actually upgrade our nervous system to a crystalline, system, we will struggle with, that experience. So, like I said, I've had a lot of really beautiful experiences, and some that my mind was literally going, what is happening right now? I can't believe this is actually real. And, and I could even hear my mind going, is this real? Like, am I seeing this? Am I experiencing these messages? But it's been such a beautiful, transformation for me to watch. And I guess with the different levels of clients and different levels of their own awakening, it depends on who will then come into the room to assist. Sometimes it's just me, and sometimes it's like a room full of, ancestors and things like that appear. So it's actually really cool when we actually start to experience and be able to channel the messages and receive some of this old and ancient wisdom, from the mystery schools and things that have been hidden from society for a very, very long time, to try and keep the coding correct.
But a lot of this information is now starting to come through for it to be shared with the world.
Yeah, the interesting thing about sharing with the world, I mean, we've never ever in the planet had so much connectivity. And I would probably kind of feel it's so surprising how much division there is as well. Like the connectivity rises, but so does the division. And like that's what we're all working towards, unity consciousness and understanding all of these things and accepting and not ridiculing and helping and approaching everyone with compassion and kindness in what they're experiencing, because like we don't know the half of it really. There's so much going on. But back to you, Kate.
Oh, I was actually, when you're talking about that, I was wondering, how do people feel about the demonic being like connected with the so-called archons and so on? Is that something that people here think about? You hear about that in the UFO field. And I think it's a Gnostic, from the Gnostic Bibles. I'm curious about what people think about the archons and how they relate to, are they related to what we're experiencing as far as demonic? Anybody?
I can speak to that a little bit if you want.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I have some studies and time spent with the Gnostic teachings, and the archons are, malevolent beings. They're normally associated with being in this world and how it was created. So depending on the belief system that you have, if we're looking through any of the creation belief systems, there is a connection there. So are they the exact same? I think with a lot of these things, it really depends on the way that we choose to, I would say, label, right? So the mind likes to organize everything into these tidy little boxes, and that's not always the way that this works. I remember, Michael had sent me what he had written, and I was saying, yes, but in Sufism and in the Quran, when we're talking about the jinn, they're also talking about the fae, because they're the same fire beings and that same energy. When we're looking at demons, we can also be looking at the jinn, but they're also very different entities. When we're looking at like Shaitan in the Quran, is that actually Satan in the Bible, or is that a different entity? So our minds like to make it very distinct as to what things are, but that's not necessarily the case. We look at shadow beings. Well, some shadow beings are ghost-like. Some shadow beings are actually beings from other places that are coming through. Some of them are actually part of the jinn. So again, it's not as easy to classify exactly what it is, but depending on the way that you choose to classify it, there are definitely similarities in the teachings.
Thank you. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's very confusing when you think about, we've got many different religious systems kind of feeding into it. Then we've got this ufology thing and the new age stuff, and it's really hard to keep it all straight. You were going to say something, Michael?
Well, I think we need to ask them to have name tags. The archons probably are known under different kinds of names and things throughout different cultures, and yeah, it's interesting. So I'm feeling like we've delved into the dark a bit. Does anyone have any fairy stories or related kinds of things? And I've been waiting for Dolly Saffron to turn up, but her and Preston haven't made it as yet. I'm hoping they will. And Dolly had a particular story. I won't tell it without her being here, but anyone, any fairy stories?
I could share a couple of things if you want. Yep.
Please do.
So I've got some fairly in-depth thoughts about what's been said already, having researched and experienced and written a lot about it. The funny thing about whether you want to call them fairies or gnomes or elves or any of that realm of people, always find that their sense of humor is amazing. And so one of my funniest experiences was getting some reflexology done and looking out the window in a perfectly still day, and one of the fronds on a fern that was just literally at the window there started going up and down. And so I'm just sitting there, the person's doing the reflexology, look out, and I see this elf sitting on the end of the branch, riding it like a horse, waving at me madly through the window. And so they have this beautiful sense of humor, sense of fun about them, and the enjoyment you get when you connect to any of the nature beings, whichever realm you want to call them in, is exactly that. They're there to help you with your plants and your gardens and your animals and all that sort of stuff. And it's something that I really welcome into my life because it does make a huge difference on just having fun when you're outside and connecting to sprites. And on my wall, which you won't be able to see with the screen here, actually took a beautiful photo where I've got two very distinct female fairies, water fairies, in the photo, in the water itself. Absolutely beautiful. And it's quite big, like it's not sure how you put it in your terms, but like a AA3 type size, and very distinct. And as a photographer who goes out and connects in nature, amongst a whole range of things I do, one of the things I was doing at one point was just saying, okay, I need some help with some finances. I was out on a photo shoot, heard a splash, got back, looked at the photos, and there's a fish come straight up out of the water in front of the van that I was actually photographing at the time. So, you know, they have a lot of fun, that whole understanding of what's out there in that fairy realm. So love them.
Yes, I had a similar situation not too long ago. I was out walking my dog, and Gigi and I were just walking, and all of a sudden this fairy like figure flew into my field, my energetic field. And in that moment, I got so elevated and so excited, I started to skip. I mean, I was like skipping down. I'm not a skipper, but all of a sudden I had this I had to skip, and I was just, just really just giddy and fun and light. And it was just, what do you say to that? It's just amazing. It's just absolutely amazing. I had a blast. Had a blast. And so I encourage, anytime I can sense, feel, and feel that vibration and that frequency, I know I'm fixing to do some more skipping. But my name's Bethany, and I just want to take this moment. I would like to clear the field right now. So if I could get everybody to take a really big, deep inhale in. Any energy that is not of our most benevolent outcome must move in all 7 trillion miles in all directions, out on 3, and it leaves. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. My teens were just like, Bethany, you need to do that. So I just decided I needed to do that. But like I said, I'm Bethany, and my own path has led me into incredible multidimensional awarenesses. In 2020, after the tragic passing of my only child, I was broken open, shattered, but yet somehow I began to remember something far greater than pain. And that is I began to receive clear signs and messages from my son and my teams, and I learned that there is no separation, that the death and that's the illusion. And what I once thought of death, became a bridge into something so sacred and communication beyond the veil for me. One unforgettable night, I I was awoken by at 3:33 in the morning. Love that synchronicity. So I was like, in my body being an aura, I was like, something told me go outside. So I go outside, 3:33 in the morning. I'm present, I'm aware, I'm not thinking about anything. I'm listening to the frogs and the crickets, and it's a beautiful, starry night, and I'm just there. And all of a sudden, a golden orbed being flies down and flies the whole length of my 13-acre lake. Now, I was unaware of that this was even possible. I haven't ever witnessed anything like this. But in that moment, I had a radiating frequency of just love, peace, and higher consciousness that it hovered really close. And in that moment, I felt my whole being activated. Like, I began to like remember almost who I am. And the orb wasn't just a sighting, it was a soul transmission, and it cracked me wide open, igniting me on an inter transformation that shifted everything. I reconnected with my universe, me. I connected with me, my divine source, my inner wisdom, and my limitless truth. So from that moment forward and through that happened in 2020, my son and that being, and from that moment forward, I have been healing and transforming, and which has now led me into this amazing company I just opened, Be Limitless Now, that helps other families, people that have experienced grief, to go from grief to growth and into gratefulness. So yeah, that's my story. That's my multidimensional activations.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen your well, how tall was that the glowing being?
It was a solid golden orbed
Oh,
being,
it's like an
just
orb.
a sphere. And it just flew down that 13-acre lake. And I'm gonna tell you what, I haven't experienced a frequency that loving, that amazing. In that moment, it was just magic. It was absolutely magic. And it elevated my body being or my whole reality. And I just absolutely just started to transform.
Amazing. That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
But and I agree with you on the grief aspect. It's definitely transformative. It has
Well,
been for me.
yeah, and I now have a better relationship with my son than I did when he was in body. I have full on telepathy with him. I mean, just like right now, he's in my ear laughing. So if I get distracted, yeah. But and I've also had amazing connections with my team, and so that right there is, I haven't lost anything. I've gained so much. Gained
Yeah,
so
I have a
much.
friend who has a very close relationship with somebody, almost maybe closer now. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I won't call him out or anything, but
Ooh.
um yeah. So as far as I've experienced that sort of golden high vibration, intense love only once. And it started just in the middle of my center of my being, and it was just like a little ball of fire in there. I've
Yeah.
never experienced it again. It would just happen one time, but I keep chasing after that experience because
Yeah.
it's so profound. Like it
Yeah.
it's hard to even, like, how do you describe love? But it's a warmth. It was
Yeah.
warm, but it emanated, but it was like this intense, loving, emotion. It's hard to describe.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. My teams came to me today and they were like, Bethany, do you go research? And so I went and researched the light spectrum. And what I found is that within the light spectrum, we as humans only see 0.035% of the light spectrum. So we are basically running around here blind as bats. We just don't see it. And so, yeah, it's just been really amazing. Just has grown my whole body being is just I'm just so grateful. Just so grateful to have these experiences and to be able to spend time with you tonight, all you guys. It's just to share my frequency and y'all share yours, your energy, and it's just radiant. It's fun. I feel like a fairy's in my field right now.
Yeah. I'm so glad, like your feelings are very infectious, and I'm at the point now where yes, I'm grateful for these experiences, but there was a time when it was like, you know what? I could probably do without them. But I think
Yeah.
I'm starting to get to the point where I'm more comfortable with them. I'm grateful for them. I'm feeling more empowered as time goes on to deal with the dark ones if they come around. Um, but I'm so even though I've been experienced this all my life, I've I spent a long time just burying it or like busy, busy in
Would you
life
be
and so on.
interested in getting rid of that?
What part?
The energy and frequency of the negative aspects.
Sure, yeah,
All right.
definitely.
Take a big deep breath in. Ready?
Right
Any
now,
energy,
okay.
yeah, any energy that aligns, acknowledges, affirms, confirms, crafts, constructs, develops, designs, generates, forms, invents, manifests, notices, owns, produces within your body, being, or reality of all lower aspects of frequency such as judgment, fear, worry, uh, grief, less than, not enough, worry, any oaths, contracts, agreements, bonds, vows, obligations, and or treaties said and unsaid, heard and unheard, known and unknown, in all space, place, time, dimension, density, reality, parallel reality, omniverse, multiverse, universe. Add on three and it leaves. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
All right. I see that Preston Dennett has arrived. Nice to see you. Was there
And
anything else? Oh, go ahead.
yeah, Preston, is Dolly going to join us as well?
Don't know that she is. I don't know that she has the link.
I did send it to her. Well, actually, no, I didn't because I couldn't find her email. Anyway, yeah, please invite her because we were going to go to fairies next and she's got the fairy story. Has anyone else got a fairy story as such?
Judy does. Go
Yes.
ahead, Judy.
Yeah, I've got my mic on, haven't I? Yep. Yeah, I've actually got to go in about 15 minutes. So my fairy story actually is in connection with the Greys. Back in 1995, I went to a family reunion over in the UK. And while we were there, we went around visiting a few of the stone circles, such as Stonehenge, Avebury, etc. And there's a particular circle over there called the Rollright Stones that we actually have a family connection with it. And it was one of the main centres of the practice of the old religion, with more witches per head of population in the village that's overlooking than any other place in Britain. And I happened to be standing right in the centre of the main circle, the King's Men, I think they're called. And it just happened to be right on 12 noon on the day of the summer solstice. And I didn't even realise this until I got back to Australia and checked out my travel diary. Anyway, I stood right in the centre and I could feel all this energy around me, which was quite amazing. And then when I got back to Australia, I kept feeling very strange, like I still had jet lag. And I was feeling very deep states when I was doing meditation and Tai Chi. I knew there was something going on. And about 3 weeks after, I had a dream in which I was taken back to the Rollright Stones and laid down right in the very, very centre of the circle. And I was held down by these little beings, because it is a very major fairy. There's a fairy knoll there. And I was held down by these little beings that I came to realise many years later were actually small greys. This is why I was interested when someone put up before about the Irish fairies supposed to come from Sirius, because I think that they're all connected. Anyway, they held me down very, very firmly, and my grey teacher appeared on the scene with a needle about that long with a massive blue crystal on the end, and plunged it into my third eye chakra. Of course, it hurt like anything, so I was struggling, you know, these little beings were so strong holding me down. Pull it out, pull it out, pull it out. Anyway, I woke the next morning, and I could remember this dream clearly. Went and looked in the mirror, and there was a little red crescent-shaped mark right on my third eye. What I came to realise afterwards was it was a download of a massive amount of information that I was to put in my books. I hadn't even thought of writing books back then, but it came through that we're downloading this information so that you can write books on ET contact from the perspective of the ETs, because up until then they'd all been written from the perspective of us humans. And so this crystal, which is connected to my grey teacher, downloaded all this information into my head. They told me you'll get help with it because I wasn't a writer. And sure enough, over the next few years, all this information started coming through. So it was a real, like it was an ET fairy experience all rolled into one. So I know that there is a connection between the two. So that's my story.
Thank you. That's interesting. I think Jacques Vallée would probably agree with you, right? Do you know Jacques Vallée, the researcher? Oh,
No.
okay. So he's a researcher. Well, he's a scientist actually, and he's been writing about the phenomenon since the 60s. I think it's been since the 60s, and relatively early on, he thought that all the stories of the Fae people and the different sort of all the different stories that Aboriginal people speak about and so on, that they could all be related to one phenomena, and that the modern ET in the past was perhaps viewed as the fairy or the jinn or something.
Look, right here on my desk, I happen to have a vase that I picked up when I went out to visit Uluru. I'll hold it up to the camera. The Wanjinas.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That's obviously a grey.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're highly respected amongst the Aboriginal people. Only the very highest initiated tribal members are allowed to draw these pictures. So yeah, there's a real link there. I know as Earth humans, we tend to want to put labels on things and put everything into its own little box, but in reality, everything is in oneness.
Mm-hmm. Interesting,
Yeah.
I've actually been trying to connect with a few Aboriginal people who can tell some of those stories, and I'll broadcast this here. If anyone would like to contact me, I'd love to hear from you about exactly that too.
Hey, Michael, look, I know someone who was trained. She's not Aboriginal herself, but she was trained under an Aboriginal elder and worked with them for many years. I can actually pass her name on to you or get her to contact you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah.
I could add in here a little bit, Michael, to our lovely people from overseas. The Wanjinas, I spent a fair bit. I grew up with Aboriginals, an Aboriginal family, and travelled a lot. So the Wanjinas came out of the northwest of Australia, and they were from the original Dreamtime, coming down through the northwest, so through that Kimberley region. And I've actually got some really beautiful photography of original rock art that was done up in that area. And so from that northwest came a lot of the stories that flowed down through the Dreamtime, down to south and down into Tasmania, through Melbourne, Victoria into Tasmania, was all the information given to us by the Waginas. When you look at them, as different to what you've got there, Judy, because I haven't seen one like that, they're actually more surrounded like that, absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
And that's pretty close to one of the shots that I've actually got from the rock art up there in the Kimberley River area. So there you go, perfect.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's predating a lot of time, and they look like ETs the way they've come in.
Yeah, yeah, fascinating.
Aussie travel story there.
Oh, I've been to a place in New South Wales, it's referred to as the Gosford Glyphs. And the story goes that a Pleiadian ship crashed off the coast and they came onto shore. And I understand that they were actually helped by the Wanginas because they were suffering in the heat and they had no way of surviving. And I think the Wanginas actually assisted them. And they're known, as the Aboriginals say, all the created beings live within nature. And you can see their faces in rocks and things. It's just amazing.
So those glyphs that you're talking about, we've actually covered a lot of that extensively in Supernal. So
yeah.
one of our writers is, or guest writers, we've interviewed, he actually has linked those Gosford glyphs back to Egypt.
Yes.
And a whole massive story that he's actually decoded. And so now he's quite famous overseas for the fact that he's been able to decode it and link it all back and in and through. So yeah, pretty amazing stuff.
It's an amazing place. There's Pleiadian glyphs on one wall and Egyptian glyphs on the other. And it's just amazing. The energy there is fantastic.
I do have a quick fairy story. It's not one that I personally experienced, but I did interview a gentleman who in 1947 was 6 years old, living in New Mexico, I think it was, here in the States, and had a little guy come right through his wall and was very jokey, playing around. He was wearing a little brown shirt, some trousers, a little vest. He was bald, had large round eyes. And I talked to him, like, could this possibly have been a screen memory of a gray or anything? He's like, no, I don't think so. He ended up having 6 visits by this little guy who gave his name, but he doesn't want to share it. It was a very personal experience for him, but shared all this incredible wisdom that was well beyond his years. He tried to tell his mother. She said, you have an imaginary friend. How cute. But he says it wasn't imaginary because this little elf guy would manipulate objects, was very funny, very intelligent. And bad news came one day when his parents told him, we're moving. So he was really upset. And next time this little elf guy appeared, he said, you know, we're moving. Can you please come with us? And for the first time, this guy got really sad and said, no, we can't go with you. We have to stay at this spot, which I thought was really interesting. And I think says something about them. I'm aware of Jacques Vallée's theory. I personally think that they're not ET. I think that these are little people all over the world. When I put that story out, I got a bunch of people contacting me. And real briefly, one gentleman told me how a little guy, a little elf-like fairy being, came into his room and was playing around with the Matchbox toys. He woke up, saw it. This little elf being ran right through the wall. The Matchbox little car hit the wall, fell to the ground, and started spinning. It's the kind of detail you can't make up. But yeah, that's one of the elf stories I've heard personally from witnesses. I did talk to Dolly. I gave her the link. She's going to be joining us shortly, but she's got an amazing story of her firsthand encounter with a fairy. Well, there she is right now.
Hi, Dolly. Glad you could make it. We're talking about fairies if you want to pop on and tell your story.
You're muted, Dolly.
The elusive mute button.
Is that better?
Yep.
I found it. Okay, thank you.
I know.
Yes, I've had a fairy experience. I grew up in the Everglades mostly, and we had a big Brahma ranch out there. And I was out one day, all day, just about, working with cattle. And I had come in. I had to take my horse's tack back in and brush her down and pick her feet and all that. And I was exhausted. And I had a little Juliet radio with me that I got for Christmas. And I was walking from the barn. It's a ways to the house. And I had just come out the paddock and from the barn, and I was walking by, we have fruit trees and things like that along the way, and big tall gumbo limbo trees, I guess you call them. I don't remember what they're called. Anyway, so I'm out there and I'm listening to this song, and I was really into it. It was a really good song, and I think it was by Jethro Tull. It was one like the minstrel in the gallery thing. And I'm just having a good time, and I'm tired, but I'm doing it. And I looked down because something glinted in my eye, got my attention. And when I looked down, I was shocked. You know how you see something and you go, huh, no. And I was really looking, and I kept walking toward it, and I stopped about, 4 feet away, less than 5 feet. And I'm looking down, and there's this little person, and she had wings, and she was wearing like weird little tattered types of clothing, and she was listening to the music, apparently, because she was like, listening to the music with me. And I your jaw's glass to hit the ground, and I'm staring at her wide mouth, listening to Jethro Tull. And I'm looking at her, and I'm thinking, I'm losing my mind. This is a mirage. I'm tired. Oh my God, but she's reacting to something that I'm hearing and listening to on my radio. And I'm thinking, this has got to be real, I guess. And I said, who are you? Yeah, I mean, what else are you going to say? Who are you? What are you? I don't want to be rude. And she looked up at me and she said, I'm a girl. And I said, okay. And she said, I'm firefolk. And I went, okay. And she said, I like your music. And I said, okay. And she said, do you have more? You know how the radio is, it was WFUN in Miami I was listening to. And I said, we have to wait for the commercials, And I was praying that they would play something good next. Thank God they did. I think it was by either Yes or somebody like that. Anyway, Crimson Clover came on. And she's listening still, and I'm staring at her, and I said, your clothes are so old, I said, do you need new clothes? And I don't know what else to say to this creature. I'm like, she has wings, And she stood up. She was sitting down, and it's by the gumbo limbo tree. They have huge root systems, and they have, stuff that hangs down out of them. And she said, she just nodded at me. I took that to mean yes. And I got excited because I had a Barbie collection, and I knew I had something to give her. And I wanted her to stay there. I was so excited. And I said, I can give you new clothes. Oh my God, I can give you new clothes. And she seemed pleased, and she stood up, and I saw her wings flutter. And I said, stay there. I'll be right back. And I tore off for the house. And when I got to the house, I found something that I thought would be appropriate for her from my Barbie stuff. And I ran back, and she was gone. And I thought, oh no, this devastated me. I actually cried. I thought, what a dumb thing to walk away from this beautiful creature. I wanted to see her again. And I sat down on the ground, and I just bawled my guts out. And I thought, oh, what do I do? What do I do? And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to leave the clothes for her. So I had I always carry hankies. When you're a farmer's child, you got to wipe your hands off all the time. I had a little, one of those weird farmer's hankies. So I took it out of my pocket, and I shook it out, and I put the clothes in it, and I folded it up neat, and I put it by the root of the tree, near the tree base. And I just said out loud, I'm leaving this for you. This is for you. And I said, I would love to be your friend. And I started crying again, and it affected me. And I walked back to the house. I spent days going back to that spot, days. The first day I went back, which was the next morning, the clothes were gone. The hanky was gone. She took them, I hope. And I never saw her again as long as I lived, but I've never forgotten her, ever, ever. She had auburn hair, and she had I couldn't tell what color her eyes were. They were somewhere shimmered between brown and green. And her hair was about as long as mine is now. And she was just beautiful. I mean, just beautiful, beautiful. And that set me on a path. I started reading after that about fairies in Ireland. I'm part Irish. My two family names are Kelly and Kite that I'm related to. And so I started asking relatives, what about fairies? What about this? What about that? A couple of my aunts said, I've seen a fairy, in my life, and admitted it. And we talked about it, but I never saw her again. And that's my fairy story.
That's an amazing story. To be honest, when I spoke to Michael, I guess it was just a few days ago when we talked about doing this show, and he mentioned fairies, and I thought, fairies? I've never heard anyone seeing a fairy until now, and
Oh my God.
now I want to see a fairy. How do you get to see them?
I don't know. I've asked myself that 1,000 times, and the only thing I could think to tell you is she had to be out there long enough to see that I worked with the animals, that I had horses, that I'm a farmer's child, that I meant nothing alive harm ever. Okay. I think that she got that, I also love music, and it just happened to be Jethro Tull. It was the song I was listening to was One White Duck in the Gal, One White Duck on the Wall. And I was listening to that, and she really liked it. And I was shocked. And I thought, okay, all right. And it was just, I thought maybe it's the time of year. It was getting close to coming into autumn. We're at the end of the summer year, and everything is coming in on the farm, that kind of thing. We were milking goats at that time. Maybe she liked the goats. I don't know. We lived in a very secluded, away from everything area, and I lived near the Sharktooth Valley, between the Sharktooth Valley and the Everglades National Park and the Gumbalimo Trail. And there was wildlife out there like you would not believe, and there were Indian burial mounds out there. I used to go dig up Indian burial mounds out there with my ecology teacher. And I think that's the only reason. I don't have any other clue as to why. My aunt said, well, you've got a lot of Irish and Scots blood in you, and it might be that she, because she said that's what, that's their culture, that's where they originated from. Maybe one followed our family out here. I mean, none of us, we had 1,000 reasons to think about it, and no answers, none, and I've been looking for one ever since. So it's amazing.
It is amazing.
Thanks. And I went to a Rudolf Steiner school, and he talks in his books and lectures and things about the elementals. And I was fascinated with that. Like, he talks about mountains and, in fact, entire planets having an elemental, and he was communicating with them in some way. And yeah, I mean, it's an amazing sort of thing. And like, really, we may not see them, but obviously they're around. And they say if you leave a certain section, like the corner of your garden, just to grow wild and whatever, and maybe put up some shiny things and like create a nice safe haven for them, they might gather there. Yeah. But I'm feeling like let's start moving over to extraterrestrials, because time's running along, and I'd just like to read you a little bit more from that article. So, encounters with extraterrestrial beings, commonly referred to as aliens or visitors, have surged in modern times, particularly in the mid-20th century. While many reports depict these entities as originating from distant planets, a growing number of researchers suggest that these beings may not be space travellers in the traditional sense, but rather ultra-terrestrials, intelligences that exist alongside us in dimensions we cannot yet perceive. And I mean, this is rolling out the red carpet for Mr. Preston Dennett, probably the world's most prolific author about this particular topic, and UFOs, of course, it's all related. And so everyone here, if you've got some ET type stories, now's the time. Thanks, Preston, for coming along.
Who would like to start? Or should I start? I don't have actual ET stories per se, but craft. Oh, Judy, go ahead.
Yes, can I tell my story? Because I've got to get going afterwards.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier on, I've had contact with the Greys, the ones known as the Greys, ever since childhood. And I made a pre-birth decision to not have conscious recall through my childhood so that I would be able to experience the fear of ET contact, because my future job was to be able to help people with this. And so as a child, I knew there was someone coming into the house or some beings coming into the house, and I was terrified that they were coming in to take me away. And it was to such a point that I wouldn't go to sleep without my mum sitting beside me up until about 11 years old. I'm, embarrassed about it now, but that's what it was. About age 15, I had an interesting experience in which I had the body paralysis, and I could see the doorknob of the bedroom turning, and I knew there was someone there, and I couldn't yell out to my parents. They were at the other end of the apartment we were living in. But I know that that night I started to make conscious contact, because after that my fear started to become a lot less. And I became aware of a teacher that was working with me. The term ET in Australia, we just weren't into things like that. I'd never heard of extraterrestrials. And now, as you were saying before, someone was saying before, I think it was Michael, I think they're more interdimensional rather than necessarily from other planets. I think that there's both, and this is the feeling I get with the Greys, that they're almost beyond planetary existence, although I think that there are different levels on the human ladder, so probably some are and some are higher up. At age 30, I had a very, very full-on daytime encounter. We were living on an acreage property, and my husband's parents were visiting for the day. And in the afternoon, I started feeling like I was coming down with the flu. And so I excused myself to go and lie down in the back bedroom where I knew I'd been undisturbed. And the next minute, the body paralysis came on, and a headache caused by this loud buzzing sound sort of going on in my head. And the next minute I became aware of 3 of the so-called Greys in the room. And they were so physically present, one of them was standing between me and the window, and they were blocking out the light from the window. And on seeing them, I immediately recognised them as family, and all my fear just completely disappeared. And they were there. I think there was some missing time, because they seemed to be there for quite a long time, but only about an hour passed. And they joked with me and they said, you've been hiding yourself away out here long enough. It's time for you to get back to work. And they proceeded to explain to me that coming into this life, I chose to come in with what is referred to as a dual soul consciousness, so that I can link into both Earth human consciousness and Grey consciousness on a conscious level. And they told me that I would be having to move back to the city, because I had to do a lot of training, learning things that in the future I would be teaching. I was also told that I needed to learn to meditate, which I'd been actually trying to do and having a lot of trouble with it, because I'd been a professional dancer. And so they told me to take up Tai Chi. Now, I had no idea what Tai Chi was back then. This was back in 1983. And they explained to me that it was like moving yoga. and that was going to assist me to learn to meditate, and I was also going to learn a natural healing modality. So the next 3 years, absolutely everything came true. We moved back to town. Tai Chi classes started up just around the corner from where we were living. I was invited to join a meditation group, and someone who joined the meditation group was a Reiki teacher, so I learned Reiki. So many, many, many years of study followed, just as they told me was going to. And now I teach Tai Chi. I have been teaching Reiki. I'm not teaching it at the moment, but I've done all these things. And I've had some very, very full-on contacts with the Greys upstairs as one of them. And in fact, I remember on one occasion walking into a room up on the ship, and there was a man in there, turned around, and the look of horror on his face. And I realised that I was in my grey body, and I was trying to communicate with him, but I couldn't verbally speak. I could only speak telepathically, and he couldn't pick up on it. And the problem is that Earth humans, when they're in a state of fear, it's like they enclose themselves within a cocoon, and trying to break through that cocoon to communicate is very, very difficult. We actually had him up on the ship to remove an implant out of his head that had been put in by the Meier group down here, the military abduction group, who were faking ET contact. And once the implant was removed, I remember saying to the two others who were with me, "Oh, that's good, that's a relief, you should be safe now." And the funny thing was, he was a fairly distinctive looking person. And I thought to myself, when I was working on him, I thought, if I ever see you down there on planet Earth, I'll remember you. And funnily enough, I did see him. I met up with him, or saw a photograph anyway. So that was an interesting experience. Another time up on the ship, I was standing behind, I'd stepped out of my body, and my human body was lying on the table. And I was training two little Greys to use a laser cutter on my leg, directing them to do it. There was no pain involved, but they were cutting around the lower part of my leg, and then they cauterized it. And when I woke up the next morning, I'd forgotten all about this until I went to get dressed, and I noticed this very, very straight cut, all about that long, with the little blisters all around it. And that was so fantastic proof. I didn't have a camera at the time, so I couldn't take a photo of it, which was a real shame. But it provided such good proof to me that, you know, it had really happened. There was no pain involved, and it healed up very quickly. So that's my main story.
Yeah, thanks, Gee. And thanks for coming in. And I guess you got to go. But so let's hear from Preston now. I know you've got gazillions. Yeah, thanks, Judy.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to so many people about all of these kinds of experiences. I mean, I've literally got hundreds of cases of people who've had contact. I personally do feel we're dealing with extraterrestrials, and that we are all also interdimensional. We humans here are interdimensional beings who do survive death and can go out of body and travel into other dimensions. And it's my assessment, I think, that ETs are very much the same as that, but really have a much greater grasp, knowledge, and use of other dimensions. It's hard for me to pick one story, so I'll just pick my own ET account, because I had an onboard experience after years of studying this. Pretty early on, I realized my family was involved. We do know that ETs do track certain families. My brother had an encounter, my little sister. I've got, I'm five brothers and sisters. So, half of us have had encounters. I never did find out if my parents did, unfortunately, but my dad certainly denied it. He hated the subject so much that it actually made me wonder if he might have had a connection to it. At any rate, shortly after I started researching this, I did start having some sightings. I did have a missing time encounter in 1992 when I was about 27 years old. with a little orb that came right down in front of my car, and that's all I remember. And pretty regularly, I would have sightings and sometimes telepathic communication, real briefly, because today is the anniversary of my niece's birthday. Well, I was driving along the 405 freeway in LA and saw a huge sphere over the freeway and instantly got a message from it. I'm looking at it thinking, that can't be a street light. This is not a building. It's not a plane. It was a very, very cloudy night. It was quite low. And this is a very, very crowded freeway. And we're all traveling at like 70 miles an hour. And I get right under it and I realize, no, that is not normal. And I got a very strong telepathic message. Your niece has just been born, which turned out, of course, to be true. So July 9th, I'll never forget it. So I was having quite a few of these kind of encounters. One where what I could have sworn was a little gray in my room. I woke up, saw something standing next to my bed, but it was so thin. I'm like, that can't be a person. It can't be. And it darted out. My heart thumped real loudly, and I turned around and, of course, went right back to bed. As many experiencers know, you don't kind of react the way you think you would. But then on my birthday, and this is significant, I think, because I've realized that there's a weird connection there with ETs celebrating certain people's birthdays, even. I was on my birthday, May 6, 2022, I think it was 20. And just kind of having a dream when all of a sudden I was not dreaming anymore. I was being pulled up into space. And I instantly recognized the feeling because I'm like, gosh, this has happened to me before. I know what's happening. I am being pulled on board a craft. And it's a very electric feeling. And it went on for, gosh, 30 seconds, which is a long time. I've had a lot of astral projection experiences, and this was a little different. And I just knew I was being taken. I'm like, yay, I'm going. I hope I never have to come back. This is amazing. And I popped, next thing I know, I'm lying on a little table inside a pretty large room, 40, 50 feet across. Always what I've heard from so many other witnesses. So it's such a joy to see it myself. A big round room with very clean, the energy, very, very high energy and just wonderful. And there were little guys around me and a much taller female being wearing a shiny-ish white jumpsuit. And I'm looking up at her. I'm like, wow, you are slender. And I saw her face, and she wasn't quite fully human. She was half, I would say, gray, half human. Like she had very, very large, beautiful blue eyes that kind of wrapped around her, very tight, curly blonde hair, almost white, very small features. And she asked me if I was okay. And I said, yes, I'm fine. And I tried to get up. And she gently pressed me down. She's like, no, no, no. We need to make sure you're fine. I'm like, listen, I'm fine. I'm really okay. And she says, no, no, just wait a second. And I'm like, listen, I'm fine. I'd really like to get up. She's like, okay. And I stood up and I looked around and I saw several people lined up in the center of the room who were normal humans, quite young, in a daze. They were kind of hypnotized. And a very, very tall gray who was beautiful. I mean, she was 7 feet tall and the epitome of elegance and grace. And I walked right up to her and she tilted her head and just a lovely being, radiating love and energy, wisdom. And she asked me telepathically, so, is this what you thought it would be like? And I said, no, this is much better. And I said, can I explore? And she said, yes, go ahead. And I walked around the room, looked out the window. I could see the earth far, far below, kind of like that. So it wasn't like a little globe, but we were, I don't know how many miles up, but way the heck up there. And I went to try to talk to some of the people in the center of the room who were in a daze and asked their name and who they were, but they could not speak to me. So I found another girl who was fully conscious, and I was about to speak to her. I did see some really alien-looking dudes on the far side who kind of gave me a little bit of like, wow, they look real alien. And then I walked to the window, which was very cool, like a cruise ship. You kind of look down And there was a girl next to me who looked Korean, an Asian girl, very friendly and very much excited. The craft dropped down from, must have been 50 miles, 100 miles up, down to the planet, maybe 10 feet up, in 1 second. Could not have been more than that. She screamed out, "Woo!" I mean, she was having a blast. So was I. But we were right above the ground and the ship rocked like that slightly, which I thought was really cool. And then it went right back up equally quickly. And I walked over to the tall gray again, who I now know is Dolly's main contact, Mama. But turned out I was on the ship that Dolly basically goes on all the time. Uh, and she gave me a little glass tumbler full of this green liquid, which was not like normal juice. It was thicker than normal. And, told me to drink it. I said, okay. I trusted her. I took a sip. I sniffed it first. I'm a sniffer. And I couldn't really smell it, but I tasted it and it was very subtle, kiwi or lime. And she started to take it away from me. And I'm like, wait, I'd like another sip. Is that okay? And she looked really surprised. Like, are you kidding? Oh, okay, go ahead. And I took another sip and that's it. I woke up in bed. But that's my fully conscious onboard UFO encounter. And it was probably one of my best experiences ever on Earth or off of it. I absolutely loved it, and I would have stayed.
Wow. And so can you share the photos that you took?
I wish I had photos.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks, Preston. We'll come back to you at the end again. I'm sure you got gazillion more stories to tell. And let me introduce Corinne. We've only just met. And so come tell us your story.
Can you hear me? That's awesome. First of all, thank you, Preston. You validate a lot of things that's happened to me. And I'm just blown away that, okay, it didn't happen to me, only to me. So that's thank you for your sharing. So I'm pretty new because I just receive a big news. Preston, you validate me about the ETs who likes family. So my father was a contactee when he was a young adult, and my mother had an experience, a time experience that and I would say the fact that she fell pregnant 9 months after that experience that it's me, when I had a lot of experience about contactees, in my side. But I want to share with you guys, my 3 encounters experience that I had in the summer 2009. So you need to know that it was that time that I was starting to be more conscious. I would say starting to be more awake and starting to question what's going on in the invisible world, not only in the EDs, because I fall into that field with my father that was like you, Preston, passionate about that topics, and he always continue his research even now. But I would say mid-July, I remember I was in my bedroom and I hear a voice, a telepathic voice, to come to the kitchen. And I said, that's weird, a voice in my head. I'm not, I don't have issue. I'm not sick. So anyway, I decided to go to the kitchen, and I remember that as soon as I get up of my bed, I starting to feel in the between, the feeling that, okay, I'm awake, but I'm kind of dreaming feeling, but I know I'm awake because I'm aware that I'm walking, and I know that, I can feel. So that kind of state of being, in between two worlds, and I go to the kitchen, and I remember that my whole body was kind of sliding on the floor. because I don't remember walking. I remember floating to go to the kitchen. And arrived to my kitchen, I saw 5 beings, probably 4 feet, 4.5 feet, dark skin, really big blue eyes, and have a silvery suit that have a sign, on their chest, yeah. So it was on their left, so me I see in the right. Okay. And that I sketch it after, and it's years later that I discovered that was the unified, Galactic Confederation. Anyway, and they were looking at me, I can't see the 5 smiling, but I can feel their smile. And they were talking to me telepathically, and they shared to me the story of the 7 sister of the Pleiades. That was quite fascinating in 2009 because, the kind of ET experience and sharing, I didn't really had that story before, so that they were sharing me that it was important for me to know, to know that the 7 sister it's related to the 7 chakras. That's a part of their energetic mothers. And it was important for me to know, so they were sharing their story, and probably 2.5 minutes, 3 minute maximum. And one of them tell me at the end, Karian, you need to know, please remember to always follow your heart. And when they shared to me, I kind of feel inside a big wave of yes, a big wave of love, I would say. And I closed my eyes because it was important at that present moment to feel that. It was really overwhelming. And when I opened my eyes, they was gone. It wasn't there anymore. So since that experience, in a grace, in a bliss, Google everything that I'm able to Google to try to make a sense of my experience. And 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks after, I went to the park because every night I need to go to a walk for half an hour walk. Otherwise, my little mouse in my head doesn't come down easily and I can fall asleep. So that's my routine I do for many years, to walk. And I sit down on a bench, on the area that I like to go. And I remember that suddenly beside me, I feel a huge, huge, huge wave. I would say wave because it's come from everybody, everywhere in my whole body, inside of my whole body, the feeling of deep love. But people, it was so intense that I start to cry, and I didn't know as a human being that love could be so intense. And I remember that I felt a being, beside me, and I turned on the bench, and they were a Lyrian being, half human, half lioness. And she was looking at me with such deep love. She was beautiful, rays of light, and really, really, I can see that she was physically there, but I can see that she was kind of half transparent at the same time. And she said to me one thing telepathically, that was, Karian, please follow your heart. And I remember, as the first time I closed my eyes, to kind of really feel that. And when I opened my eyes after, 10 seconds, she was gone. And of course, that night I didn't sleep too much, right? And thinking about the experience and everything. And since that, I started to have vivid dreams. I started to go, as I share to everybody, the night university. So having a double life, if I say so, and many, many, many other experience and contactees in that level. And 2-3 weeks ago, after that experience, I was in my bed and looking. My friend gifted me the book "Tell Us to Read," and I was reading, and I felt kind of big, big, big bowl of light orb. It was really kind of peachy and white at the same time. And that ball was just in front of me and started to grow until it was probably 6 feet tall. And somebody get out of the orb and the orb disappeared. And it was a Syrian person. And she was really probably almost 5'6", 5'8", tall, light blue skin, and beautiful eyes, beautiful smile, beautiful light, the same kind of ray of love, that love is real, like from everywhere, from the aura. And she looked at me and she said to me, I am so happy that you're awake. I am so happy that finally you woke up. I was so scared for losing you, sister. And my first reaction, I get up of my bed and I come to see her and I hug her. Don't ask me why. That was my first feeling. And I hug her, kind of, it's okay, I'm awake now. I don't know how, but I'm awake and I'm here. And that was my inner voice, right? And she said, Karian, I cannot stay for a long time because it's really, really, really demanding physically to be here right now with you. But I just want to share that we're going to continue to see each other and to continue to have conversation, but more in a multidimensional way, and meditation and dream. And she say, please never forget to follow your heart. I don't know for you guys, but when the third encounters, say to you the same thing, please follow your heart. Let me tell you that it started becoming the center of my life. Okay. After that experience. And the feeling, I was so happy to see her because I recognize her like she was my sister. But I felt so sad because I cannot continue physically, the kind of interaction. And she said, I need to go. And the orb, started to appear and grow, and she go inside and the orb disappear, really. So this is my 3 physical 3D, encounters that I had. I have several after that. I would say in dream and meditation, and because I have the ability to be at the same 2 places at the same time. So I had a lot of experience with ETs. They can do that. Yes. Here we go,
Well,
Michael.
We'll talk about all of that in more depth later on. And at some point, we'll start doing interviews with people like that too. Before we leave extraterrestrials, thanks. Kate, I know you've got UFO stories, and I've only got really one major one of seeing a silver orb just hanging in the sky for hours and hours and hours, and I was watching it for hours and hours and hours, and I actually now think like maybe something happened there. I don't know, but it was fascinating and sort of like, are you going to move? Are you, Kate, over to you.
Yeah, it's interesting that Karine was talking about the being actually going back into the orb. So I wonder if these orbs are sort of kind of like personal transport vehicles or something, some sort of, it opens a portal and they can move around with it or something. And there seems to be such a huge influx of orb sightings. I've mostly seen craft, and I've seen craft very up close with other people at times, in the daylight, at night. So I've seen 8 different types of craft, and I would only classify one as an orb, and there are about 14 of them. And that was while camping, and there were, you know, It was my boyfriend and I, and then there was another campsite, or like we were on the beach, and there was another campfire with 6 or 7 people around it, and we all watched these 14 orbs for about must have been about 20 minutes, half an hour, and they appeared as very, very, very bright stars, like if you saw Jupiter up close in the night sky, how very bright it is. And they just started appearing one by one until there was about 14 of them, and then they just danced around for for 20 minutes, half an hour, and then one by one they slowly just disappeared. And we were just like awestruck. We had no, this was in 93, so talk of orbs, there was no talk of orbs. But now I think, well, maybe they were orbs of some sort. Prior to that, I had seen a football-shaped vehicle, a craft, very close, maybe 500 feet up and 500 feet away, 11 o'clock at night. This was in 92. And it had lights going around it, kind of like your classic UFO. And the lights were, so the vehicle itself seemed to be about, I don't know, 50 feet in diameter, give or take. I described it as like sort of the mass of two 747s, one on top of each other. So it was just huge. And because it was so close, it was very clear. And the lights going around it went in this pattern, red, yellow, and blue all the way around. And they were very muted. And they were only, the lights themselves are maybe 1.5 feet in diameter. And then the thing was just floating there, no sound, and it just disappeared. And then it reappeared. So that was in the western sky. It reappeared in the eastern sky, then disappeared and reappeared in the western sky again, and then just disappeared. So that was the first craft I had seen, and it kind of blew my mind in a way. Like I kept walking, and I could feel this sort of fog coming down. Like my brain was like, no, 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 that I didn't see that. And my roommate at the time said, did anybody just see that? And so then I like, oh my God, you saw that? That was real. And so I had him describe to me what he saw, which is what I just told you guys. And then I didn't see anything for years and years and years until I think it was after actually spending an hour with Whitley Strieber. After that, I attribute perhaps that might have triggered something, maybe not, but I started seeing other craft. So other craft that I've seen have been a disc, and that was in the middle of the day, 2 o'clock in the afternoon at my grocery store. Right? So very strange. So I see this disc about 1,000 feet away. Sorry, a kilometer away, I figure. And it was just at the base of a very large cumulus cloud, so I'm not sure how high that is. And it was just sort of sitting next to the cloud and glinting. And so it caught my eye, and I watched it for a few seconds, and I thought about taking out my camera, but it was kind of tucked in the cloud. So I'm like, I'm not going to pick anything up. So I didn't pull out my phone, which I'm so disappointed I didn't, because a few minutes later, from an adjacent cloud, maybe 100 feet away, a 50-foot long cylinder object, white cylinder object, crossed the open sky and moved into the cloud beside where the disc was. And that was about 15 feet in diameter, give or take, and 50 feet in length, maybe more. It's hard to tell. So I saw that. I've seen from my balcony in the middle of the afternoon, I saw a 4.5 foot in diameter sphere, metallic sphere, and it was flying across the wind. So the winds were going west, and this was going sort of north, basically. And so across the winds, and at first I thought it was a balloon, and then as it came closer, it was only about 300 feet away. It just sort of kind of just passed by my building, just like la di da, like what? So that was pretty strange. And then at Contact in the Desert, I saw, and this is 2023, I saw a manta ray shaped object lift off the top of the peak of a mountain and just lifted up straight up like that, maybe 30 feet in diameter, and then just sort of took off. Then one night on my balcony, 11 o'clock at night, saw this a very bright looking star moving along, and it flares, and then it goes back to its original brightness, moves along, flares, back to its original brightness, moves along, flares, and the last time it flares, it actually morphs into a boomerang shaped object, a white boomerang. And I would put that at about 30 feet in length on both wings. And it was beautiful. It was white, and it just sort of soared up into space, basically. And that was probably, again, maybe less than a kilometer away. So very clear. That one I wasn't sure. Like a boomerang. It's got two wings. You think, well, maybe that's one of ours, but the fact that it morphed into something made me realize that can't be. And then one time at an airport, this was in Cancun Airport. I saw this strange bulbous kind of oval shaped object with like these kind of like protruding lights. And it was only about 50 feet above our heads. And there were other people, 2 or 3 other people standing there, and we all saw this thing. And the guy beside me says, "Oh, is that a UFO?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think that's a UFO." And then it just kind of flew off, and we just turned around and went back to our business. And I actually forgot about it. It was like weeks later, I thought, holy shit, I think I saw a UFO in Mexico. Like, this is bizarre. So those are my craft stories. And then maybe you guys can help me with this. I saw a being once, and this was in 97, middle of the night, 3 in the morning. And I get up to go to the washroom, walk down a very long hallway of my apartment, leave the lights off, go into the washroom, turn the light on, go to the washroom, turn the light off, and standing there in front of me, about 1.5 feet away, is a 5'10", what appears to be a male that looks like a human male, except it's all of light. It's just a being of light. And so as soon as I saw it, I literally just kind of collapsed to the ground. I didn't experience any fear. My body just completely just gave out on me. And when I looked up, it was gone. So that's the extent of my waking experiences. I've had a lot of dreams with ETs and so on, and a lot of experiences in that liminal state or hypnagogic state. But those are the extent of my, I think anyways, I might be forgetting some, but of my daylight stuff or waking experiences.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm quite jealous, I want to have more of these kinds of things. And we've got Victor here. Did you want to say anything, Victor? Any stories of yours?
Not really, Michael. They don't really kind of, I guess, coincide with what's going on. I guess the only thing that I can say is that I've been involved with this over, I guess, 45 years now. And during that period of time, I've encountered a lot, let's put it that way. But I suppose my experiences relate more so to my encounters with Dr. John Mack. And after reading both of his books and visiting him at his office at Harvard University, because he was interested in some of the things that I was doing with respect to children and these experiences. And we sat in his office for a couple of hours and discussed all of these things. And I guess the aftermath of all of that, plus encountering individuals up here in Toronto, with about 16 individuals who I met through, I guess, an encounter group, much like this, who had experiences. And having counseled, and I say counseled because I have a background in that in my educational career, these people just they just want to talk. They didn't want to necessarily believe or understand. They just want to talk about it and feel secure about it, that they weren't going insane. And that was the feeling among these 16 people. So individually, I would talk to these people, try to uh, have them understand what might be going on. And as well, I might say, I had no idea myself what was going on with them. But the variation of experiences within all the people that I've spoken to over the past 35 to 40 years resonate so strongly with what's going on right now. And I guess the theme of it is we really don't know, all of us, with respect to the human family, what's really going on. There are so many differentiated experiences that we can't put a label on all of it because it's so different. It goes from the individuality of a fingerprint to the collective notion of what's going on. So that whole range of experiences is very difficult to understand. And that's what I've learned over the past while, because in counseling some of these individuals, two of them related to me experiences with respect to being taken from their home and on craft and impregnated by whatever beings the two women that I know of encountered, and then being brought to, I guess, the first or second trimester of their experience, brought back, having the fetus removed from them, and then being brought back into their bedrooms, and then being taken probably, a month or two later to these craft and being asked to hold their hybrid babies and with them and share that experience with me. And this happened on two occasions, and I know other people have explained that to me too, but not in as much depth. But these experiences on a real human visceral level are so verifiable that these people who've encountered them don't care much what anybody else thinks about what they've experienced. They literally don't care, and the reason they don't care is because it happened to them. They know that they were taken. They know that they were moved through walls or windows. They know that they were taken up into craft, sat in ante-rooms with their pajamas on, with other people in those ante-rooms in the craft, brought one by one into an examination room, laid on metal tables and impregnated, and then brought back into their bedrooms. And these are experiences these women specifically went through with absolutely no doubt at all as to what they went through. And when you hear their experiences, you have to wonder, well, I mean, are they confabulating or whatever? And there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that these two individual women did go through this. And having someone experience and tell you these things when they hold a hybrid baby in their hands with a gray behind them, trying to understand how that human would be interacting with that hybrid child, trying to understand how the human interacted with the being. There's no way that these people, these women, would be prone to make up something like that. And it is so verifiable within their own experience, and that's only relating to some of the individuals that I have known who've woken up in the morning with ligature marks around their thighs, or wounds on their arm with respect to experiences that they've gone through. So I'm not quite sure how these all translate into the experiences that I've heard tonight. I've sat back and listened to many of them. But I think the entire question remains is that however we are being engaged with these beings at whatever level, be they fairies or grays or whatever they are, however we are being engaged by these entities, it is a message to the entire human family that we are on the next step of evolution of our own species. This is a fact. This is where we're at. And all of the experiences that I've heard tonight prove that we are, in fact, on the threshold of the next step in our evolution as a human species. And irrespective of how these manifestations are, I guess, manifested to us, the one theme, the one message is on a cosmic level, interdimensional, call it what you want, that we as a species are beginning to evolve to the next step in understanding our place in the cosmos. And I think that however we understand these experiences and have these experiences explained to us, most of the people in the human family right now are totally oblivious to this, which kind of it concerns me that there's that ambivalence among the human species about this. But there is going to be a huge awakening at some point with respect to this issue. I'm not sure how that's going to come about. I really have no idea. But the collectivity of what I've heard tonight from many of the experiencers proves to me that it's expanding in a geometric level with respect to how many people are actually engaging these things at whatever level. And it doesn't matter what level we talk about it at, be it fairies or dreams or whatever. Our consciousness is being challenged to expand its own cosmic connection to how the cosmos manifests itself. And the cosmos has many, many secrets that we don't understand. And if we pay attention to how the cosmos is speaking to us, either in specific experiences, intergalactic or interdimensional experiences, the cosmos is communicating with the human species at our level. And I must add that we're not the only planet that's going through this. It's really interesting to understand that. We're not the only beings on this little ball of mud circulating around our sun. Other planets, other beings on other planets are experiencing exactly the same thing as we are. So this is a cosmic experience. This is not just unique to the planet Earth. So I think it's really it behooves us to understand the galactic or the huge universal message that's being thrown at us in so many different ways, and we're trying to understand it as individuals, as a collection of people that we're talking to right now, and as an entire human family. So I think that that's a really important part of understanding this, that we bring all of this information together and attempt to understand it from a cosmic level so that we can bring these forces who are trying to contact with us, make contact with us, so we understand all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we've heard all of that tonight. So I just want to put it in the context of the universality of what we're all going through. Every single individual who's spoken this evening is going through something different, but it means something in a larger cosmic experience. So I just thought I'd contribute that to the discussion.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's really, really great. Yeah. And it actually prompts me to mention, really, that's what Beyond Being Human is all about, or partially anyway. And we have got these support and discussion groups going too. And this reflects the need generally for people to discuss everything that's happening to them and feel this sense of family, because we're not alone. We can share all of this. And you can find this page at beyondbeinghuman.org/support-groups. And if you scroll down, you'll see where you can actually join in. Just go click to register, and it jumps down to the calendar page. And Jennifer, who's here, is one of the support group hosts, and Tanis as well was here earlier. And we've also got young people group. I haven't actually had time to really tune in to what's been happening, but please do book yourself in. It's only once a month for a whole range of different people, so you've got choice of different times and things like that. And I know our people generally are very happy to engage and talk about all of these sorts of things too. And I know Preston would probably love to hear different stories for new books and things. But let's jump over to quick, just before Jonathan, I'll come back to you in just a minute. Anthony's got to go, so I wanted to give him a little bit of space to talk a little bit further about elementals, and we'll wrap that topic up and we'll come back to you, Jonathan.
Right, thanks for that. So when we're talking about the elementals, what Victor was saying about the universality of everything, and as an editor and a writer and a medium and whatever, I'm really enjoying hearing everybody's views on how they're being interacted with on an energetic level. The elementals are something that if you're connected into nature at all, so whether that's gardening, growing stuff, animals, that sort of thing, my experience has always been to lower the vibration or your vibration a little bit to actually lock into their energy. And so when I mentioned in some wording earlier to some people about divas, the divic kingdom in my world is all about everything. So there's a diva that looks after your little piece of property, your home. There's a diva that looks after your neighborhood, your state, your country, the planet. And it's sort of like a hierarchical type system, which is very much how I understand the fairy world to work, in that hierarchical type system. And what I've found over the years, I'll go out and I talk to my trees. So for example, my youngest boy, we went out to do some, to cut a tree down. And he said to my partner, well, what about the lady that's living in that tree? What happens to her? And at that point, I had to stop and reevaluate my whole life in that space and then reconnect. And that's where my journey into that whole fairy world went. And so now if I'm going out to work on my property, if I've got to take a tree down for some reason, I talk to the consciousness of the tree. If I'm doing pruning, I talk to the consciousness of the tree and the divas and the fairy world that might live in there. So whether they're gnomes, elves, whatever you want to call them, we all have a different way of sort of visualizing them, but I actually honor them. And the same goes for the animal collective and the animals that I have on my property. I'm very blessed to have lots and lots of different birds on my property. Lots of different animals come through. So for the non-Australians here, we have black wallabies, which are quite rare, that live on our place. We have deer, we have kangaroos, echidnas, wombats, all living, apart from the snakes and the spiders and everything else. And so working with the animal collective, they work very closely with divas and the divic kingdom to keep them happy. And so I have this process of working and acknowledging them all around the place, so not just here. So if I'm traveling throughout Australia, long distance driving, night, I ask the animal collective and my guides, my people, to put like a shield in front of my car. Looks like the old-fashioned trains that come in, so that the animals get guided around my car, not on my car. And then for every dead animal that I come across, I, in my world, white light them, which is really like saying a prayer over them and saying, I hope, the animal collective come and look after the spirit of this animal that's passed away. And that's really important to me. And it gets to a point where, if I find an animal on my property that's dead for some reason, I white light it. Sometimes, like with our animals, our chooks and ducks and whatever, when we go and bury them, we do the same thing. We acknowledge the divic kingdom and then the consciousness of who looks after those particular animals, plants, that sort of stuff. So just to I sit outside, I have what I call wood henge, which is some pine trees that we had to cut down that we changed into chairs and a table. And it just sits there, and we go out and we put rocks and plants and all that sort of stuff in there. And I just go sit there and I just breathe and just allow my vibration to lower. And at that point is when the Davyd kingdom will come in, or the fairy kingdom, or the animal collective, because I'll get birds come and land and talk to me. If I'm doing a reading in my studio here, I quite often I'll have a bird come and tap on the window while I'm talking, or I'll have a snake come up and just sort of say hello and then just keep going through. And you know, and it's acknowledging that part of us that is connected to Mother Earth or Gaia, depending on how you want to do it. And just on again, some of the things that have been said, which have just been really mind-blowing and amazing. The Earth's core has sped up, which has created a vibrational shift on the planet. And this was explained to me by a scientist quite a few years ago. And what that's done is, because we're all connected, all of us are connected through Mother Earth, it's raising the vibration of every person on the planet. And I see that as really important, because what that's doing, everything that's being talked about, is everyone's having experiences because our vibration is shifted and lifted. And so, you know, 30 years ago when I started training as a medium, you know, you had to work really hard to raise your vibration to connect to the spirit world. And now when we do that, it's easier. So you almost got a medium, a psychic, a UFO person, an experience that's had, anyone having an experience, is because our whole vibration is actually lifting and raising. And that's what's creating the change on a bigger scale within the planetary section. And then, like Victor talked about earlier, which was a great talk, there's actually more on a astrological existence on multiple planets happening with us at the same time. So that's why, as the editor of Supernal, I get to interact with a whole lot of different people, and it's just sharing people's stories is what the magazine's about. And yeah, and thanks again for inviting me in, Michael, and lovely to meet everybody. And yeah, I will be chuffing off soon, but thank you very much for letting me have a little chat.
Well, thank you so much. And if you haven't seen the magazine, I don't know, is it available on newsagents or just a few shops here and there?
The actual physical magazine, that 50th issue, is only available in a few places here in Australia or through Supernal's website. We're predominantly a free, I'm going to say predominantly free. So we have, we're online. The current issue is made available free for the period of 2 months that it's out. And then it gets locked away in the vault, and then you pay a subscription fee, which is not very much, to access all our back issues. And we've just put to bed our 55th issue, and just realizing today we've been running for 7 years already, and it's just a little team that put it together, so predominantly me. And then I've got some great team members that work with me, and I have writers from all over the world, you know, supporting what we're doing. And following on with what Michael's just said, we've just started up what we're calling paranormal pages. And those paranormal pages are all about everything outside what is our paranormal. And so, yeah, so we've just started up a whole new section in that space as well. So, yeah, we're just growing and changing and getting ourselves out there. So, and Michael is one of our writers, so you can read his stories on there as well.
Yeah, and I publish my stories on the Beyond Being Human website as well. But thank you. It's great to hear from you, and we'll do more. And yeah, Jonathan.
Yes.
Over to you. Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you. This has been very, very informative, and I want to Victor really nailed it and put it all in context in terms of, this is a long, long story. We've all had our different experiences, but what strikes me, and I really, again, Victor, you couldn't have said it better, and I look forward to hearing that again, but because you give it a really good galactic cosmic context. Again, what is striking me, I'm here up in the Texas Hill Country where we're just dealing with this flood. We have, 120 people that are known dead, and there's still more they're looking for. But what strikes me is that all of your stories here, there's such a disconnect between all your experiences and, say, where the governments are in terms of the disclosure movement. There's such a disconnect in terms of the shared realities here. So, you know, what Victor's doing, and I think, again, how, and I guess what Supernal is doing is how to make this transition for humanity so that we don't get blown away in a tsunami in the hill country is what we had a tsunami where it was just totally overwhelmed. For the average person to sit and listen to these stories, they would think you're all crazy. And of course, that's the thing that John Mack went through. And I knew John Mack, so we did some crop circling together just the prior before he passed away in England in 2004. But again, Victor, I just really, you're contextualizing all of these stories, and we all like to tell our stories, but it's also listening to them, and then how is this integrated for humanity? How are we? I mean, we are blessed. At times, people perhaps may be cursed, with the darker side of it. But it's out of the darkness comes the light. So, anyways, but thank you for allowing me to kind of sit on the bench and listen to this. And I just again want to thank you all. There's a lot of work ahead. Preston, I've heard some of his work before, but it's one thing that I don't like to hear. Well, I had my mind blown. We don't need our minds blown anymore. We don't need to be excited to share this experience. I mean, we always I'll drop this bombshell or it's shocking or, we don't need to have that. There's enough trauma. So how do we move into this with grace? I think that's, where is there gracefulness? Where is grace manifesting in this whole? Well, it's not disclosure, it's revelation. And I think, Victor nailed that. I mean, things are being revealed to us of a larger context of our humanity within the cosmic story. So, it's how do we move gracefully into this, not in the sense of sudden, anyway, I think I'm making myself clear. But again, thank you much for this and hope to be back in a month.
You certainly made yourself clear, Jonathan, for sure. I guess my contribution would be, if you go out one night, eventually to a restaurant, and you're sitting there having dinner with your wife or your friend or whatever, and we all know what that experience is like. Okay, the people are sitting there in the restaurant and they're chatting about their families and everything. But can you imagine one day when you go to a restaurant and you sit down and there's 15 or 20 or whatever number of people at tables, and all of them are talking about this issue?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the level that we have to get to.
Yeah.
When you go
and they
into
have a
assembly,
prayer, and they share a prayer and a meditation.
That's right.
Too, because
Exactly.
this is a spiritual.
Yeah. And you go onto a bus or in a subway, or you go to a library, and all of the people are saying, oh, and I know Kate knows this, how long has this been going on, and why don't I know about it? And how is it not being manifested in the proper way that everything else is tragic with our human species being manifested? Why is this issue taking a back seat to everything that's going on the planet? And that sentiment intrigues me endlessly with respect to how I personally feel about it. And not only that, how I got a sense from everyone here tonight that feels about their own personal experiences. So it's really important that we bring this all together so that the human species can talk about it all at once, if that ever were to be possible to happen.
Yeah. And this is much larger than the nation state. This is a real issue of the human species, the Homo sapien, and how we evolve and transcend.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. And then, of course, there's the whole other issue of how much AI is in ET and how much ET has AI. I mean, that's another way of connecting with this, and that's a whole other conversation. But I think one needs to be attentive, vigilant on that, and not be. But again, thank you all. This is very encouraging. But again, how do we make this transition, this initiation?
Yeah. Well, thank you. This is exactly where I'm hoping the whole conversation will go, and we'll definitely be expanding on all of this. And I want to point out on that page where I've got the multidimensional reality article, there's a link to a Project Rationale essay that I did, which goes into a lot of what you're talking about, because I'm feeling on a personal level, there is a growing need, and it's becoming a little bit more urgent too, as people are having these sorts of experiences. They don't know where to go because they haven't been associating with groups like ours and various other things, and it's sort of like really out of the blue. And there's such a huge body of evidence, I guess, and other people experiencing all of these things, and it's really important to share a lot of that. And I felt urged to say in the press release that went out on Wow Signal, which is part of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. Do you know about that, Jonathan? Yep.
Yeah, I know Steve. I know. Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I said worldwide attention on UFOs has grown fast during the very recent past, with new sightings and first-hand reports of extraterrestrial encounters, plus numerous books and documentaries. In 2026, there will be a new feature called Disclosure by Steven Spielberg. And whether an official disclosure ever arrives from the US government is becoming more and more irrelevant as the grassroots public interest in this phenomena continues to explode. And it's so heartening to see how, like, even in the last 3-4 years, it's really starting to rise. And I know the conversations that I've had with a lot of different people who just are blinkered. It's like, oh, well, show me a really good photo. And there are tons of photos around. And I recently connected with Michael Horn, who's an expert on Billy Meier. And we're going to be doing some stuff too. And like the evidence there is absolutely incredible, even though it's extremely controversial. A lot of people are trying to debunk him and all of that sort of thing, but it's absolutely fascinating. And similar to Beyond Being Human, Michael agrees that ultimately it's not about the UFOs. It's not even about the ETs or anything. It's about our divine connection. And even some of the ETs have talked about it, and maybe Preston can chime in now on that particular topic, as well as healing, like the amazing stories of people being healed by extraterrestrials. It's absolutely incredible. And we're kind of getting to wrap up a bit, but we can probably go for another half hour if everyone wants to stick around. And after that, we'll be having I'll just close the recording and we'll just be able to chat amongst ourselves. And thank you all again for being here and coming. And thank you, Cate. And this is probably one of the best kind of conversations I think we've done. And I'd love to talk more with you, Victor, at some point too. Yeah, but maybe Preston, could I pass over to you if that's okay, or anyone else? Put your hand up, and if you wanted to share a story.
Yeah, I'm happy to share a story. I know Dolly stepped out, but I would love to share her story because it's amazing, and I think. There's a lot of people out there who are asking all kinds of questions about the nature of contact and what's going on here. What I like about Dolly's story is, I'd been studying this field for 35 years when I met her and had many questions still about what's going on. Who are these ETs? Where do they come from? Why exactly are they here? Why are people being taken on board? All of this. And that's what I really love about Dolly's story, is it's easily, by far, the most extensive case I've ever had the privilege and honor to investigate. I wrote a book called Symmetry, A True UFO Adventure, which covers just the surface of the many, many events that she's experienced. In fact, we're putting together a sequel because she's had so many experiences. And this sequel is going to concentrate more on the knowledge that she has been given by the ETs. But in brief, her story begins like most contactees at a very young age. She started having contact, and this was a little bit hard for her to put together at first because she was having these little guys come into her room. She was having some missing time incidents. She was being taken to what appears to be another planet. She now knows, in fact, it was, where she was taught with other children on various subjects, mostly ethics and morality, but really everything: science, astronomy, biology, physics, mathematics, history, psychic abilities, all of this. So she was basically, like many contactees, living two separate lives. And she learned to kind of separate them very early on because she did try to share it. She lived out in the Everglades, was pretty isolated. So she didn't have a whole lot of opportunities to talk to people. Her mother was very much opposed to any of this. So that made it even more difficult. Her father was pretty highly placed in the military, so he was often away from home. She did have a brother, but he was a few years younger than she was, so he wasn't really available very much either. So she pretty much kept to herself. At age 14, she became frustrated with these experiences and trying to figure out, what's happening to me? Am I being taken? Are these ETs? She knew, but on some level, she wanted some answers. So she vowed that the next time they showed up, she was going to remember. Come hell or high water, excuse me, she was going to remember. And sure enough, on one evening in 1973, a UFO came down right behind her house. This is again in the Everglades. And two little windows were there. She could see little grays looking down at her. She's like, this is my opportunity. This is really happening. Oh my God. She got a wave of fear because this was very much brazen, in your face. And she dove under the bed as the room filled up with light. And she kind of had missing time there. But she woke up the next morning and started racking her head like, what happened? Already she was beginning to remember. And goes into the kitchen and asks her mom, did you see anything last night? And her mom doesn't like this subject. When Dolly brought up UFOs, her mother became furious. At the same time, the radio came on and said, well, two nearby police officers at Dadeland Mall, not far away from where she lived, saw a UFO last night. So that was proof for Dolly. And her father came into the kitchen and heard her screaming and her mother and said, you need to go into the room and meditate. You need to think about what just happened to you. So she did, and she recalled that when this UFO showed up, she was actually pulled on board by what she calls an energy beam. And it's a very long, drawn-out experience. I could have written an entire book on this one experience at age 14. But in brief, they took her on board. She puked. They cleaned her up. They put her in a little room where they decontaminated her using light. This is something I've heard from many contactees. So the craft was bigger on the inside than on the outside. Another detail. They gave her a tour of the craft, showed her quarters, actually. She found her little hairbrush there that she'd been missing, but basically calmed her down and said that they were very excited that she had finally woken up to her experiences and counseled her and told her to come up to what they call the place of movement, the control room. And they sat her down in the pilot seat and said, let's go on a little journey here. This was so interesting to me because I had recently interviewed a gentleman, Joe Gardner, who had the experience, same thing, where they took him to see the planet Saturn. That's what they did with Dolly. Then they took her to the moon, actually landed. And she had a big counseling session, and they asked, what would you like to do with your life? And she, of course, was into many things. She was being a nurse. She was helping with animals. She wanted to be a marine biologist. But she's got a lot of pilots in her family. She loves flying. And just kind of on a lark, she asked, I'd like to learn how to fly the craft, the UFOs. And they said, okay, this is a big job. You'll really have to commit to this. It's going to take some time and effort, but if you're willing to put that forth, we'll see if you can do it. And so that's what happened. And this is when her contacts ramped up to an amazing degree. She was taken about twice a week, taken on board, tested physiologically, with reflexes, neurologically, psychic ability. This was so interesting to me because basically this is how the craft are flown, through psychic ability. This is another thing that really answered some questions for me. She also said the craft themselves are embodied, alive as we would think of it. She has a name for the entity who embodies the craft, Talata. This was so interesting to me too, because so many people have told me this. So she really started to fill in a lot of the gaps in my own knowledge about what's going on here. And over the next 4 years, they taught her how to fly this craft. I know this might sound unusual. Grant Cameron put out a book called Sky Pilots, which presents some 20 or 30 cases of this. So this is not actually that uncommon. Again, I've interviewed some people who've had this exact experience. But this, from this point on, she worked regularly with the ETs and spent quite literally years working with them in small segments of time, hours at a time, sometimes a few weeks or even over a month. They would always bring her back, maybe just a few minutes or an hour later. They do have that ability to kind of pull you out of the time stream. And she was there when other people were being pulled on board, when they were rescuing animals and bringing plants up. They've got huge arboretums, huge what we call Dyson spheres. Her story is so extensive, but really drove it home for me that the purpose for onboard people being taken on board is largely healing. It's all about healing. I wrote a book called The Healing Power of UFOs, which covers over 300 cases. And I can tell you most major researchers have these cases. John Mack, Bud Hopkins, Barbara Lamb, David Jacobs, all of them have these cases. Yvonne Smith. This is one of the main reasons people are being taken on board, to uphold our genetics, because we're in trouble. This was another big message from the ETs. Many contactees get this message that we're on the wrong pathway towards self-destruction, the use of nuclear power, war and aggression, greed and corruption, all of this stuff. So this was basically the message they gave, and that our sun is on the verge of sending out a coronal mass ejection, which will basically wipe down our grid, our electrical grid. So she decided to come forward because she's hearing so much disinformation and misinformation and just plain nonsense in this field. So I vetted her story. I'll wrap it up here for 6 years. Really, she opened her life to me very bravely, very courageously. It's very difficult for contactees to do this, and it certainly was for her. But I've seen her medical records, verification of implants and healings. I've talked to her supporting witnesses, her family, her friends, her coworkers who have been there when she was taken. She has a sterling resume working as a registered nurse for the Department of Defense. She has incredible photographic evidence, video evidence. It's very rare for a contactee to be able to get any photos of their craft. So yeah, it's such an excellent case, a really important set of experiences she has to share. I can't thank her enough for coming forward. Let's not just kind of close with this, because this is so interesting to me. She was looking for somebody to help her tell her story, and was going to researcher after researcher out there. And I'll put that in quotes, because there's a lot of people out there who are pushing a fear narrative, or are in it for the money or fame, or simply misguided. And she had a really difficult time finding someone who she felt could present her story objectively in a facts-only manner. And she told the ETs that. She says, I'm at a loss here. I don't know what to do. And they said, well, here's a guy we want you to take a look at. We think he might be the one that can tell your story. And gave her my name. When she told me that, I was stunned, but I have to say, someone else told me that previously. And it wasn't long after that, I got a call from a guy in England who just wanted to talk. He had had an encounter with Greys, and they were telling him all these same things and said, you need to contact this gentleman in the United States. Gave him my name. So, I asked Talia a bit about this, and she said, we are all known to them, every single one of us. We are all contactees at some level. Even those who don't fully remember it have certainly had the opportunity. And the ET's message to everyone is to stop believing the nonsense and the lies coming from our government and other disinformation people. You need to go within, develop your own psychic abilities, develop your ability to tell the truth, or detect the truth rather, discern the truth, and raise your own psychic abilities. This is their main goal with humanity, is to elevate us, our spiritual abilities, for lack of a better word. And you can see this with all contactees, almost without exception, are profoundly psychic. And we'll start having experiences with mediumship and healing and clairvoyance and precognition and remote viewing, astral projection, levitation. So yeah, I know that's a big mouthful. I've got a lot more I could say about her story, but hers is the one story I wish everyone would just take a look at, because I think it answers a lot of the questions that are being raised tonight with this meeting.
Wow, thank you so much, Preston. And I want to share that your profile page is on Beyond Being Human, and it's got all of your links and things, and we should do more in terms of promoting each individual book and all of that. And and people can go to your website and see more, and you've got lots and lots of videos, and fantastic.
I would like to say one more thing real quickly, if I may, because this is important. And Dolly says this is a message that people need to know, that ETs are not here right now. When she told me that, I'm like, what do you mean? She says, our planet, our magnetic fields have collapsed 40% and are going down. And you can look up the science on this. Don't believe me. I wish you wouldn't. I wish everyone, again, would do their own research here. But she said, basically, they had to bug out. This is why there's been so many crashes over the last 100 years, UFO crashes, because they use our magnetic field lines to navigate. And since then, I've gotten the same message from a number of other contactees. Just recently, a lady told me, like, I haven't heard from my contacts in 4 years. This is not to say they can't communicate telepathically with you, or are not still watching over us, or that you can't still visit them perhaps, astrally, or them visit you even. But I've talked to a number of contactees who've absolutely verified this same thing. It's a message I'm trying to get across. So that I just wanted to add that in there.
Thanks. Yeah. And anyone else want to add anything about that? But actually, let me also mention Costa McCrae runs the ET Let's Talk organization, and they hold C5 gatherings quite often, and he's got a great website, and he's got a whole community around the world which is doing all of the good work, so to speak. And he has probably the most amazing orb photo that I've ever seen. And I invited him today, but he's otherwise engaged as usual. And hopefully we can do more of these sorts of things. And it's actually really kind of interesting from my point of view with Beyond Being Human, because I got the urges several years ago really to do all of this, and I shied away from the extraterrestrial side of things kind of deliberately because I was getting so much pushback. But then recently, earlier this year, it suddenly changed. It's like, okay, now with the whole disclosure kind of thing really ramping up, that let's get into it. And so this sort of thing. But I do want to mention, in terms of Beyond Being Human as an organization and a community movement, I guess. We don't want to singly focus on extraterrestrials, but this organization, which was mentioned before by Tanis and Jennifer, Alliance for Extraterrestrial Diplomatic Contact. I know Sylvain's starting to do more things too, and that's his profile page on Beyond Being Human, and you can go there and go to the links there. And yeah, I mean, I'd encourage people to start branching out into a range of different kinds of organizations, because like it's all happening now, and we don't know how long the environment is going to hold up. Like, it's just incredible watching right now how the disasters and changes in weather are really occurring and really affecting. Like, just last week we had the whole East Coast kind of battered, and you know, the floods in Europe and the floods in Texas, and so it goes on, and it's increasing. So let's get into it, folks. And over to you, Kate.
I have a couple of questions for Preston. Going back to the moon, do you think that it's possibly a Dyson sphere?
No, I don't. And
No.
I know there's a lot of talk about this, but you know, Dolly has asked the ETs flat out, and they said no, it's not. And I think if you look at the science on this, no,
Okay.
I don't think that that's credible. I think there's a lot of disinformation in this field, and that's one
Yeah.
of the disinformation points. Yeah.
The other question I had is, so if the ETs aren't here, what craft are we seeing then?
Almost exclusively reverse engineered government craft. We've gotten very advanced with this, and it's publicly known, TR-3B and other things. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I would really refer people to researcher Michael Schratt, who's kind of the go-to guy on this. He does
Yep.
excellent facts-only research. I adore the man.
Yeah.
He's very objective. And yeah, from what I understand, this is what people are seeing almost exclusively. Yeah.
That sort of makes sense to me, because like that disc that I saw, the sphere that I saw, that almost felt like it was something we would make, but it was using anti-gravitic, so I'm like, well, that can't be ours. But
Not
if
to
we
say
do,
the ETs aren't coming back, you know, because I've gotten a message from many contactees, and Dolly's been told this as well. If any of you are contactees out there, you've probably gotten this message that at one point the sky will fill with craft. People will
yes,
be scooped up if there's an existential crisis. So no,
okay.
they're not abandoning us by any
No,
means.
no, I didn't get that. I'm just kind of thinking about I had my own experiences. I've had like the 92, 93 sightings, and then I had a grouping after 2022. So thinking, and most of those were like this shiny white metallic kind of objects, which suggests to me perhaps something of ours, but all showing anti-gravitic type of propulsion. So I'm just thinking maybe everything I've seen since 2022 perhaps is our technology.
Yeah, well, that's about the time they bugged out.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting for me to hear from, because I'm in touch with, a few hundred contactees still. I've lost touch with, I would say probably most of them, because people move on with their lives. But yeah, I'm still in contact with them, and I am not getting this onboard cases anymore, or the direct cases of humanoids. Again, some people, yes, they can appear to you if they want to, in sort of an astral form, and it will look solid to you, and they can absolutely communicate with you.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah,
There
and
was
I just want to
someone.
underline that people are still in telepathic contact as well.
Got it. Yeah. There was someone in the experiencer group, and Professor Jonathan might remember him. His name was David, and he was I forget the type of what
Was he the
his.
fellow from Chicago?
No, he was the one from Berlin, and he was an astrologer and
right. Okay.
he did other things. I forget the
Yeah.
name of the type of magic he did, but he had an experience, sort of an out of body experience, where he saw in around 2022 all these ships lifting up out of the ocean and taking off, leaving. So this like goes along with what you're saying. So anyways, I've taken up enough time. I
Yeah.
think the professor had something he wanted to say. And oh, can I just say one more thing? Is it possible, Michael, that we can take a 5-minute break, or should we just get up as we need?
Well, I think let's have a last word from Jonathan, and I'll close off the recording, and we can just leave the room open and come and go as you like. And I'm ordering pizza and champagne, and but I did want to mention before we do close off too, it would be really lovely if the audience here would be able to make a donation, please, because my expenses are just starting to go through the roof as we expand, and we're changing the website over to a much more functional kind of way where we can have discussion groups, and we're going to be creating courses and all sorts of different kinds of things with that. And hopefully that won't take too long, maybe a month or two. And you can just go to beyondbeinghuman.org/membership, and it's all there explained. And there's a donation link there too. And yeah, at the moment, because I'm in this transition, the old newsletter system is not operational, but if you just email me, and the link there is on either the beyondbeinghuman.org/news page, and you can just email me from there. But thank you all again so much, and over to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, 2 points coming back around to the discussion on the moon. Neil Armstrong's my cousin, and my father and uncle knew him, and there's a lot going on. He was not able to reveal what he actually saw. He did, and if you watch his presentation at the 25th anniversary at the White House under Bill Clinton, he really reveals what was, if we pull back the veil. So they did have an encounter, and the moon, that's a whole other thing, and we really need to find out what the Chinese now know about what's on the moon. That's the first thing. The second thing, coming back around to the fact, as Preston mentioned, we're under some threat. I don't know if any of you are following the work of Ashton Forbes and the whole issue of 0-point energy. And I see Kate is, yeah, there's something going on there that actually there is part of the whole restraint on disclosure is that they are actually covering up the fact that they have kept secret this technology for the last 80 years, actually in the 50s, the antigravitics. But Ashton is rather abrasive and rather lacks grace, but he has really gone deep into the physics of it. And he's brought some really, I'd encourage you to look at what he's doing, because he feels, he really calls out the folks that are hiding it through their national security agreements and things like that. But that's, that's just 2 points, I think, in terms of seeing this wider context, and that, the question always is, well, what kind of fuel are the UFOs using? It's not fossil fuel, and they're coming in a different time warp. But anyway, again, thank you, and I'm going to have to go here shortly, but appreciate Victor again. I really liked what you had to say tonight. That just really put it in great context. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you.
Yeah, and Jonathan, please send me an email so we can be in contact too. Yeah.
I have a question from the YouTube audience.
Go.
Okay. So the question is about the future human hypothesis. Are some NHI us? And have we cracked a time travel capability? Not sure who would like to answer that. Maybe Preston, yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to jump into that because it's kind of a trick question. No, they're not us from the future. I really did a deep dive into all the UFO literature, and anyone I've ever interviewed has never been told that. But one message almost all contactees who've had extensive encounters do get is that yes, the message is that we are you, you are us, we are one. It's some variation of that. It's funny, when Dolly told me that, I laughed out loud because I've heard it so many times. ETs have made it very clear that we share a common ancestry. We share a common heritage. They have genetics like we do. Greys have said to many contactees, we are essentially human. We looked like you. They're all humanoid, almost without exception. There's a few outlying cases which I frankly question, but the fact that all ETs are humanoid in form, bipedal, a head and arms, legs, apparently breathing oxygen, and this speaks volumes. And the fact that some look just like us, and that's undeniable. There are many, many reports of, I don't like the term Nordics. I think it's misleading. I'd call them human looking, because I've talked to many people who've seen, dark-skinned human-looking people. It's all really more ancestry than anything else. Yes, we are them, they are us. We are all essentially ET. I'm not so sure we evolved on this planet, according to what many contactees have told me, including Dolly. At one point, we lived on Mars. There's been some really interesting research pointing towards that as well. So yeah, not us from the future by any means. I don't think that they're an intelligence that wears different masks. I don't think it's demonic or anything like that. They are people very much like us. Well, certainly you can call them interdimensional. I'm not sure how useful that is because we're, as I said earlier, all interdimensional. There are people who are so psychically evolved, they can levitate and bilocate and do all kinds of the abilities we see with ETs. But yeah, they are us, we are them.
Thank you.
I can share to that a little bit as well, just in some experiences that I have had very much, Preston, to exactly what you're talking about. And one of the most recent ones is actually in a book that's going to be coming out about my experience and remembering a lifetime as an ET. And through that, recognizing all of where we actually do come from, how we've originated, how the ETs came into form, and then how they then seeded us so that we are all one. We are all connected. We are a part of them as much as they are a part of us. And so I agree completely with what you're saying, Preston. It's not us at a later time. We all are. And time, the way that we understand it, isn't even what it actually is. And so even in this, I'd say previous lifetime, I do think that all of it is parallel anyway, because of the way that we experience. We think more linear, but that's not the way that all of this unfolds anyhow. And so the way that we're moving forward is actually paralleled to experiences in this other lifetime. And there's been a lot of things that have been coming through that are sharing how we need to do this spiritual evolution, as you all were talking about, because this is really what is going to prepare us and help us with the changes that are happening. You're talking about the DNA shifts and the things that are deteriorating in us. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we are not in the trajectory that we could be on. And so through these experiences, we're getting information. And if this information could be spread, which is what Beyond Being Human is trying to do, and Preston, obviously, with your books and others as well, the more that we can share this information with others, the more that people can understand what we're meant to be doing, the more we have capacity now to actually grow and expand and evolve ourselves in the way that we need to in order to save ourselves from where, Earth has been in its trajectory lately.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. And I think we probably need to close up. Is there any last story or words from anyone before we... Oh, Bethany, hello.
I just wanted to say that I'm so grateful and thankful for this conversation tonight. It's been an enlightenment. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of awareness. It's been a lot of energy, a lot of frequency. And I just wanted, from my heart to you guys' heart, I just send in you all the love.
And back at you. Yeah. Okay, well, would you believe it's been 3 hours and 5 minutes? So I'm going to close the recording and we'll stick around if you want to stick around, and we'll have a little bit of a chat. And I've got champagne and pizza coming, as I said. Anyway, thanks again, folks. See you next time.
Yeah, Michael, you said 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
That's the nature of time travel.
Yeah, that's right. Speaking of which, I was going to mention, talking to Michael Horn about Billy Meier, he says that Billy provides absolute 100% verifiable truth of time travel with their group, the Pleiadians. And we'll be exploring that. Okay, thank you all. Glory in the light of the Radiant One. Peace and love, as Ringo would say. And be kind, generous, bold, and share your story. Now's the time. Thanks, folks.